What's up everyone, how are you all? Today we are back with second part of What if Naruto was sent to high school DxD and accidentally became the most powerful harem king part 2. If you enjoy then please like, share and do comments. Naruto just stared at her, wondering just where all that came from. He didn't even understand half of what she just said. Still, she brought food, and he was hungry. So he grabbed one of the pastries she had made. Taking a quick bite, Naruto immediately commented, "Not sure what you just said, but something must have been right in there. Your food is always delicious, but this is amazing. Thanks, Sadist-chan." "Ufufufu, I'm glad to hear that, Naruto-kun," Akeno replied with her usual demure smile. She also took the opportunity to slide closer to Naruto while he was occupied by the pastry. Moving till her hip was touching his, she also placed a hand on his shoulder as she added, "You'll eat anything, but I simply couldn't stand knowing my cooking wasn't to your taste." Naruto didn't really hear her words, only registering the hand on his shoulder. He quickly slid a bit away from her so that she wasn't in his personal space anymore. That was a problem that had quickly appeared when Akeno found out how to sit next to him. She then got all touchy, always moving close and touching him unnecessarily. It creeps him out, which is probably why she did it. Eventually Naruto would end up pressed against the armrest with Akeno right in the middle of the couch due to the gradual movement to the side this game produced. "Thanks, Sadist-chan. You really didn't have to though. As you said, I'll eat anything you put in front of me," Naruto finally managed to tell her once he re-established a safe distance from the club's sadist. "Nonsense. My pride as a cook won't allow subpar snacks, but I had to ask. Are you ever going to call me by my name, Naruto-kun?" Akeno asked. "Are you ever going to stop being a sadist? That's your answer," Naruto answered bluntly. "That's a shame," Akeno lamented before continuing with a smile. "I so wish to hear you call out my name. To scream it out. Akeno-sama, I dream of it every night." See why Naruto still felt uncomfortable around her. Naruto didn't even want to have to respond, so he just went back to his food without a word. Yuto took the spot next to Kaneko. The group then settled in and got comfortable. Until Rias surprised them by announcing, "Okay. Now that everyone is here, I have news from the Archduke." "Wait, we actually have something to do?" Naruto asked in genuine surprise. His surprise was well warranted. Being a devil wasn't quite as exciting as one would think. They'd only had one actual task since Naruto joined. Otherwise they'd just spent every afternoon and early night sitting in the club room, since that was the time when clients usually summoned them. Just relaxing till they had something to do. It wasn't bad, but it was a bit lacking in the excitement Naruto preferred. "Yes, Naruto-kun, we have a task," Rias informed him matter-of-factly. She then explained, "Visor, a stray devil that killed her king and ran, has started residing nearby. She's been luring and then eating humans. We've been ordered to deal with her." That cut Naruto's happiness at the thought of a job short. He quickly waved his hand before grumbling, "I'll pass then." The other task had been hunting down a stray devil as well. That had been a very boring job, and it had the same signs as this one. That this visor is eating humans is a bad sign. While eating humans is a quick way to get strong, it is only effective for very weak devils. Humans aren't strong enough to provide a decent boost to more powerful devils. That she was located is another indication of her power. She wasn't even able to put up a barrier to conceal her energy signature. The final sign was that Rias was given the job. That the handling of Visor was given to such a young and untested devil means Visor is not a real danger to anyone with actual strength. So a pest, in simple terms. Not enough for Naruto to bother. Rias clearly didn't agree as she told him, "Sorry, Naruto-kun, but you can't pass. I decided to send you, Yuto, and Akeno to dispose of her." "Come on, Akeno alone is enough," Naruto argued in annoyance. Akeno was the strongest person in their group, even including Rias. She could easily handle some pesky stray, although it might be drawn out for pleasure. "Most likely, but better to be safe than sorry," Rias retorted immediately, not affected by Naruto's clear displeasure. She then added as she turned back to several papers on her desk, "Unless you can get Kaneko to switch places with you, you're going." Naruto turned towards Kaneko hopefully, but Kaneko cut him off when he opened his mouth to announce emotionlessly, "Don't wanna." Groaning, Naruto threw up his hands and declared, "Fine. I'll go, but I'm not happy about it." He then moved to stand by where Yuto and Akeno stood. He then crossed his arms while pouting. Your opinion is noted, but ignored. Now go exterminate that devil, Rias ordered with an amused grin. Naruto just stuck his tongue out at her as Akeno summoned the teleportation circle. The trio quickly found themselves in a forest, a mansion in view. Naruto pulled back his tongue since there was no redhead that had sent him on an annoying task here. Visor is in there, Akeno told them as they started moving forward. Since Rias wasn't here, she was sort of the leader. The three started moving through the forest towards the mansion. Still not very happy about being forced to come, Naruto tried to be optimistic by commenting, maybe I jumped to conclusions. This Visor did kill her cane. The other one just ran away. That has to mean she's at a higher level, right? Not necessarily, Akeno quickly pointed out before explaining, I saw her picture from the report Bucko received. Visor is quite beautiful. It is probable that she was reincarnated for the sole purpose of acting as a concubine for her master. Such practices are common among members of the pillar families. So she would have had plenty of opportunities to poison him or to kill him while he was sleeping. The Archduke didn't inform us of any special skills or talents she had that would indicate she is anything more than a devil who got tired of her role as a concubine. Seeing Naruto's head drop in depression from her words, Yuto pitched in, don't make any snap judgment. She could have killed her master in battle. Even if that is true, it likely wouldn't make much difference. Not all high-class devils are strong. Bucko is considered a genius at using her demonic power. It's not always a matter of power that determines who can form a peerage. Sometimes it is determined by birth. There are many high-class devils who never leave their family home or train. They just rely on their peerage to protect them. Visor could have been the servant of just another arrogant noble with no discernible power of their own. So it wouldn't be too impressive an accomplishment if she did kill her master in combat. With his hope of facing a decent opponent once again crushed, Naruto sent a baleful glare at Akeno before asking, you just love stomping on my hopes, don't you? Akeno put her hand in front of her mouth as she replied gleefully, Ufufufu, you just make the cutest faces when disappointing. I can't resist. That caused Naruto to pout and turn his head away from her childishly. His exaggerated anger at her quickly dissipated as the trio walked into the entrance hall of the mansion though. Looking around, Naruto announced neutrally, I recognize this place. My realtor showed me it. The previous owner died 4 years ago with no kids. There aren't a whole lot of people wealthy enough to buy a place like this in town, so it stayed on the market. Something tells me this isn't going to help its sell value, Yuto remarked as he eyed the broken windows and disorganized paintings on the walls. Yeah, I doubt that as well, Naruto deadpanned. Quiet, you two. We are now in Visor's home turf. This will probably be easy, but we should stay alert. Arrogance has killed many powerful individuals, Akeno warned. It was unnecessary advice since Yuto and Naruto were both being careful, but the point still got across. No needless talking or joking till Visor is dead. So they both straightened a bit more as they made their way through the entrance hall. Akeno opened the next door and it immediately became clear Visor was there. The scent of blood was heavy in the air. Naruto scanned the large room that was filled with multiple pillars. The scattered remains of mauled humans were spread throughout the room. Yeah, Visor definitely had to die. This was a lair for a wild animal. Not a person. I smell something foul, but also something delicious. Are you sweet? Or are you bitter? I need to find out, a haunting female voice called out. A figure then appeared on the far side of the room. It allowed the group to see the stray devil's torso. She was rather attractive woman with long black hair. She was also rather voluptuous, something that was practically impossible to ignore since she wasn't wearing a stitch of clothes to cover herself. So her S were on clear display. No response came from their group for several seconds. Naruto finally scratched his head as he told the stray in front of them, sorry, but our king isn't here. She's usually the one to do the whole, pre-fight banter thing. Can we just skip straight to the part where we kick your ass? We have things to do. Visor clearly wasn't pleased with his words as she immediately snapped out, such impudent brats. I'll dye the walls with your blood. She then grabbed her S and seemingly started groping herself. The group just stared at her with raised eyebrows before they all saw the magical circles forming over her S. The three all easily dodged when yellow blasts were fired from her S. Considering the walls where they hit melted, It's probably a good thing they did. Naruto quickly muttered to himself, geez, if you wanted to banter I could have done it. No need to shoot your stupidly UAL attack at us. Naruto-kun, not exactly the best time, Yuto commented. Yeah, let's just get this over with. I feel like taking a nap in the clubroom, Naruto replied flippantly, not at all nervous about their current situation. Died Tilda? Visor screamed in rage as she moved towards them, revealing her bottom half. Unlike her top half, which was reasonably attractive, the bottom was clearly that of a monster. It was faintly reminiscent of a centaur, her 4 legs being furred, and having a tail shaped like a snake. That effectively ruined any degree of appeal she once might have had. None of the group were surprised by her physical state. It turns out reincarnated devils can't control their power very well at first. The evil peace system instead uses their king as a sort of filter or control on that power, preventing it from running wild. Reincarnated devils eventually can control it themselves once they become strong enough or spend enough time as a devil. When a devil becomes a stray before that point though, those filters on their powers stop working. Their bodies are then twisted by their powers, with their minds corroding as well. This process is only enhanced when that stray devil then starts eating humans to gain power. They gain more power that they can't control. In a few weeks Visor will be nothing more than a beast, in both mind and body. Yuto decided to be the first one to attack, typical since he's a knight. His job is really to weaken the opponent with his speed. He moved so fast he would disappear to weaker devils, jumping towards Visor's torso to cut off her human arms. With Visor screaming in pain, he pulled back. That was Naruto's cue. With Visor distracted by the pain of her sudden amputations, he jumped in with an axe kick. Satenkyaku. He spoke as his heel connected with Visor's centaur body. The copied attack of Tsunade had enough power to slam Visor's large body into the ground with enough force to crack the stone ground. Visor howled in agony. Naruto landed calmly beside her, but was surprised when her snake tail snapped towards him. Seems the tail has some degree of consciousness or self-instinct since Visor is still incapacitated from his kick. Despite being surprised, Naruto's reflexes were still fast enough to grab its head inches before it dug its fangs into his shoulder. With a frown, he grabbed it with his other hand. He then spun around and pulled, intending to toss Visor over his shoulder. It would have worked, but it turns out the snake isn't quite as strong as he hoped. It snapped halfway through the throw, so Visor went flying through the air instead of slamming into the ground. Crashing through one of the pillars, her flight was ended when she connected with the wall. Sliding down the wall, Visor struggled to her feet weakly as she hissed, "Impossible. Such young children can't be so strong, I'll crush you all." "Nah, you're just weak," Naruto pointed out, completely unconcerned with her threat. That just caused her to scream in rage again. A large magic circle formed in front of her. Seems she's going to try and blow the entire place to hell. Can't have that. Before Naruto could stop her, Visor was interrupted when she was consumed by lightning. Akeno had finally stepped in. It should be noted she could have finished this at any time, but felt that Naruto and Yuto deserved at least some action since they were forced to come along. She should end this now though, since Visor is very clearly becoming unstable. She simply had no choice but to shock her now. To cause her agonizing pain. She loved her life at times like this. Naruto's sweat dropped when Akeno started repeatedly shocking Visor, repeatedly mocking her by commenting that she was still alive. A blush on her cheeks, and sensually licking her lips all the while. It was times like this Naruto only reaffirmed that being afraid of Akeno is a good choice for his health. Avoiding sadists is simply a smart life choice. He was starting to feel sorry for Visor by now though. This was starting to drag out too long. Looking at Yuto, the knight understood. He quickly created a short sword with his sacred gear, Sword Birth. He then tossed it to Naruto. Weighing it briefly, Naruto then chucked it at Visor. His aim proved true as the sword sank right into the stray devil's neck. With the shape she had been in, it only took a few seconds for the body to go limp. Era, you took away my toy, Naruto-kun. Is that your way of volunteering yourself as a replacement? Akeno questioned, clearly not pleased by Visor's premature end. That would have usually sent Naruto running with his tail between his legs, but he wasn't quite in the mood to back down right now. So he just looked back at her firmly as he stated firmly, "Akeno, You're out of line right now. We don't torture defeated enemies. Understand? He understood the desire to hurt someone who wronged you, but that wasn't here or there. Visor might have been a murderous, insane bitch, but that was still unnecessary. She wasn't a threat. They still had to kill her, she was out of control after all, but not like that. She was little more than a rabid animal. It should have been quick and easy. Torturing her just too much, and Naruto was going to make that clear to Akano. He doesn't care if she is a sadist. He isn't going to let her take her sick pleasures out on every enemy they defeat. No way. Several sparks came from Akano as her eyes narrowed at Naruto. Clearly his sudden stand against her sadism didn't agree with her. Naruto's body tensed as he actually considered that she might attack him. He had basically called her out right in the middle of her most intense sadist mode. The sparks and the glare both ended instantly as her bearing changed. Tilting her head and putting her cheek in her palm, she spoke up in her usual soft voice, "Era. It seems I got a little bit too excited. I apologize, Naruto-kun." Naruto wasn't sure what to think of her sudden change, but decided to just accept it for now. He'd rather not come to blows with Akano. He wasn't sure he could win. He might be able to pull something out of his ass, but right now she simply had more firepower at her disposal than him. He didn't want to have his ass shocked like Visor. Thankfully Naruto was given the perfect opportunity to bail from this tense situation when he felt a slight tug. Recognizing it, he quickly informed the group, "You guys can go back by yourself. A client is summoning me. Tell Rias-chan I'll return in a bit." He then summoned a magic circle and disappeared. So he didn't notice Akino's eyes fixed on the spot he had previously been inhabiting, an unidentifiable emotion in her eyes. She only broke her intense look when she felt Yuto's eyes on her. Hiding whatever emotions she had been feeling, she put her hand before her mouth before saying in an airy voice, "Ufufufu, sorry. I was distracted. Let's go back to the clubroom." Those two then teleported away, leaving the mansion empty once again. Another devil would be sent to do cleanup. Their job was done. Next morning. Maybe I should skip the first half of the day to nap in the clubroom, Naruto muttered to himself as he slowly walked towards school. He'd had a number of late-night clients the previous night. Devils don't need to sleep as much as humans, but 3 hours was pushing it. He really shouldn't skip part of the day considering his grades, but he really doesn't feel like listening to the teachers drone on right now. As he was considering, a peculiar feeling washed over him. Stopping, he cocked his head and closed his eyes to concentrate on it. It felt like medical chakra. No, not exactly. It's similar though. Now which should he do? Go to school and listen to his teachers blabber, or should he skip and investigate this feeling? Who is he kidding? His choice is clear to anyone that knows him. Fuck school. So Naruto turned and started sprinting in the direction of the feeling, which almost immediately led him to a large park. Naruto often came here to enjoy the nature of the place. It didn't take him long after entering to pinpoint the source of the feeling. Leaning against a tree from a slight distance, he just watched. The source of the feeling was a young nun, appearing to be 15 or 16 years old. Her long blonde hair was partially covered by a white veil with light blue edges. She was wearing a typical dark blue nun outfit that had light blue edges as well. Naruto's attention was also forcefully drawn to a silver cross hanging around her neck. She was crouching beside a small boy, her hands hovering over a scraped knee. Naruto saw a light green glow coming from her hands, specifically the 2 rings on her hands. It felt eerily similar to healing jutsu, but still felt a bit off. It also felt a bit different from the healing spell Rias had demonstrated for him. Either way, the energy quickly finished healing the scrape of the boy. Seems Naruto had arrived right at the end of the process. The kid straightened and started eagerly talking to the nun, but Naruto was a bit too far to hear what he was saying. The kid then ran off to a nearby woman that was talking on a cell phone. Pulling on her dress, he pointed at the nun while babbling something. No doubt telling his mother that the nun had healed his injury. The woman just frowned and narrowed her eyes at the nun in suspicion. She then grabbed the boy's hands and started to drag him away from the nun, despite obvious protests on his part. Naruto sighed in frustration at that. Religion was starting to be distrusted nowadays. The woman likely thought the nun was up to something. Seeing the nun looking sad at the act of the mother, Naruto couldn't help but walk over to her. Once he was standing behind her, he told her in a warm voice, "Don't let that woman bother you. What you did was very kind." The nun jumped slightly, having not detected him. She looked over her shoulder at him. Standing up, she turned to face him before she started apologizing profusely. "Sorry, sir. I didn't see you there." Naruto waved his hand nonchalantly before replying without care, "No worries. I'm a ninja. Can sneak up on people, you know." The nun didn't really know how to reply, but finally just giggled and commented, "Not very ninja-like of you to say that." Grinning, Naruto eagerly explained to her, "No. It is the perfect thing to do. Who expects a ninja to declare himself a ninja? No one. By acting opposite of what people expect, I defy what they consider a ninja to be. Thus they never even suspect. It's perfect. I am the greatest ninja of all time." That just caused her to giggle, which caused Naruto to pout. Why did no one believe him? Even announcing it outright, everyone just thought he was joking. "He's a ninja, Datbeo. You're funny, sir." "Oh, I'm being rude. My name is Asia Argento." "A pleasure to meet you," the nun said as she gave a short bow in his direction. "My name is Uzumaki Naruto." "Nice to meet you," Naruto replied with a grin, his eyes quickly looking at her features. She's rather small and petite, although not to Kaniko's level, with modest curves. Her large eyes are green, and she has long blonde hair that flows down her back. Her pale skin was flawless. Wow, she's a cutie. Not to mention the innocence in her eyes enhanced the nun angle she had going on. Putting her attractiveness out of mind, Naruto then added, "Especially since you have such a cool power." The nun blushed slightly at that. She fiddled with her fingers as she bashfully explained, "Oh, you saw that. I just sort of acted. I must have surprised you." "Kind of, but it doesn't matter. It's an amazing power. I wish I could heal people like that," Naruto stated with a grin. He was honest about his desire to be able to heal instead of only destroy, but he'd never had a talent at it. Thank you," Asia whispered, obviously unused to such blatant praise. She then told him modestly, "It's a gift from God, allowing me to heal all who are injured. A truly amazing power." Naruto detected the gloom surrounding the last bit, but decided not to pry. The "gift from God" part means that it is the power of a sacred gear. A sacred gear to heal the injured. What a powerful item. You got to hand it to God on that front. His sacred gears are remarkable. Makes part of Naruto wish he had one. Oh well, he's awesome enough as he is. Anything else just wouldn't fare for every other male in existence. It's hard enough to measure up to him as is. Anyo, Asia started hesitantly, grabbing her dress while looking at the ground. She then looked up at him with a small blush before finishing nervously, "I seem to have lost my way. Do you think you can help me?" "Sure," Naruto answered immediately, no hesitation whatsoever. He couldn't have denied that face even if she had asked for something more troublesome. The upturned eyes, slight blush on her cheek, and waver in her voice. It was a knockout look. No chance of resistance. "Thank you so much. I've been wandering around for a while," Asia exclaimed happily. She then continued by telling him, "I've been transferred to the church in this town." "The church?" Naruto muttered as he scratched his nose. He quickly explained to her, "Sorry. That just caught me off guard. I'm friendly with most of the church groups in town. They don't meet at churches, instead using community centers. So you don't know where the church is," Asia said softly, clearly depressed by his answer. "Not at all. I know where it is," Naruto quickly claimed, holding his hands up to prevent Asia from getting sad. "I was just surprised. The only official church in town has been abandoned for quite a few years. I can still show you the way though." "Thank you very much. I appreciate it," Asia declared while giving another bow. "No problem. The church isn't too far. Just follow me," Naruto said with an uncaring shrug. Seeing Asia pick up a brown suitcase, Naruto acted quickly by picking it up himself and claiming, "I'll carry this for you." "Ah, you don't have to do that, Naruto-san. I can carry it myself," Asia protested adorably, her hands waving awkwardly like she didn't know what to do with them. "Nonsense. It's the duty of a man to carry the heavy stuff. Especially for a cute girl like you," Naruto said with a wink at the end. Now that left Asia even more flustered. Her face going beet red, it was clear she was unsure how to respond. Finally lowering her head and twiddling with her fingers, she muttered out in an embarrassed voice, "Thank you, Naruto-san. So cute." Man, if only Kaneko could act like this. The clumsy and shy appeal wouldn't quite work for Kaneko like it does Asia, but even that would be better than the cold emotionless thing she's doing now. Naruto had always had a weakness for little things that are cute. Kaneko's attitude didn't work for him much, but Asia just scored a critical hit. Naruto had to fight the urge to squeal and hug her for the sheer amount of adorable she was putting out. Thankfully he didn't end up doing that, instead just shooting her a grin as he started walking. The two started walking together, but they were mainly silent. Asia still looked embarrassed from his earlier comment. Naruto was thinking about the implications of Asia's presence. Rias had explained that the reason there was only a single abandoned church in town was because the angels really don't have a presence in town. The fallen angels apparently have a small presence, but not much either. This city is deep within Devil territory, specifically the Gremory and Seatree clans. The other factions don't allocate any resources here because it is enemy central, so to speak. Those resources can be better put defending their own territories or in territories where their presence is more ingrained. There are religious people in town, but none that actually are an asset to the war or know of the war. They're just normal people. Asia is clearly a nun though, and she wields a sacred gear. A powerful one in Naruto's opinion. She's a powerful asset, no doubt. That she has been transferred here could be an indication that the angels might be making a push. An uncomfortable thought since the peace between the three factions is very unsteady. Naruto's thoughts were interrupted by Asia asking nervously, Anyo, Naruto-san? You said you are familiar with many of the church groups in this town. Are you a Christian? No, not at all. I'm friendly with many Christians, and those who follow other religions. However, God and me are, well, let's just say my presence isn't exactly welcomed by God, Naruto awkwardly admitted, unsure of how to really put it. I don't believe that. Naruto-san seems like a good person, and I believe God welcomes all with open arms. Asia proclaimed with a certainty only born of faith. Naruto shouldn't. He knows he shouldn't. Rias will be pissed. Fuck it. Naruto can't deceive such an innocent girl, I'm kind of a devil. That caused Asia to freeze. No surprise. Part of Naruto was hitting himself for just outing himself like that, but Naruto wasn't too bothered overall. Although leaving out important pieces of information isn't technically lying, the thought of doing such a thing right now didn't sit well with him. Asia was too innocent for that. He already liked her, and he'd rather she know such an important piece of information before they interact anymore. He'd rather not start a friendship out with a lie. If this changes things, then he overestimated her. She just slowly turned to look at him with wide eyes before stuttering out, "Add devil?" Putting his hands up in the universal peace sign, Naruto quickly burst out, "Yes, but you don't need to worry. I'm not planning to attack you or anything. I also lack a craving to drink human blood, don't feel like causing any wars, killing God, or want to devour any babies, although I do have to admit I am curious on what a baby would taste like. They say humans taste like chicken, but I think babies would taste like veal or pork." Naruto actually came to a stop and got into a thinking pose as he considered that last bit. Which was apparently a bit too much for Asia, and she burst out giggling. Trying to cover her laugh behind a hand, she admitted, "You really aren't what I heard devils are supposed to be like, Naruto-san." Grinning at her lack of fear, Naruto shrugged before replying, "Not a surprise really. It's only natural you'd be told all devils are evil. It's a flawed opinion, but one that ultimately is an enticing view." "What do you mean, Naruto-san?" Asia asked, actually listening to his words. Shrugging, Naruto answered simply, "Each side wants to believe the other factions are evil. It's easier to think that instead of the truth." "I'm not so sure what you mean, Naruto-san," Asia claimed in confusion. Naruto looked at her before explaining a bit awkwardly, "Well, we're at war. There may not be any outright battles, but the three factions are still at war. War sucks, and no one comes out the same way. It's just easier for people to claim that they are right and the enemy is wrong, you know?" "And not really," Asia admitted. Sorry, just give me a second to think on how to say it right," Naruto told her as he started rubbing the bridge of his nose. After several seconds he started slowly, "The three factions are at war. In war, lines are drawn. People start thinking in terms of us and them. They start building these walls to separate themselves from their enemies. The people on the other side are no longer just like them. They are the enemy. This is done to protect themselves emotionally from the stress and trauma of war. Asia's face scrunched up as she tried to make sense of his words. She finally muttered carefully, "You're saying they create reasons to limit the empathy they feel for their enemy, to limit the guilt they feel." "Yes, exactly," Naruto exclaimed with a grin. Sort of sad that she could phrase his words better than him, but he'll take what he can get. He quickly elaborated, "In war, all the participants suffer. People die, are crippled, face incredible guilt. There is a reason that PTSD exists and some just go insane because of it all. War is harsh enough when you don't sympathize with your enemy, that people eventually just convince themselves their enemies are evil. Because it would be even harder if they accepted that their enemies are just like them. They don't want to accept that their enemy is just as afraid of death. That their enemy has family waiting for him at home. That they have hopes and dreams of their own. It is just easier to believe the enemy are evil monsters that have no feelings. That is kind of sad," Asia commented as she considered his words. "Maybe. Choosing the easy path may be attractive, but it also means you miss out on many opportunities. People grow and learn when they face difficulties. When people just do what's easiest, they limit their own potential. Life isn't easy, and it's when people try to make it easy that conflict is born," Naruto claimed, his eyes glazing over as he thought of all the challenges he had faced in his life. They were agonizing, but they are also what made him into the person he is today. A grin eventually grew on his face. Turning to Asia, he added enthusiastically, "I don't believe it. This can't be changed though. My master told me that he believed one day everyone would grow to understand each other, and I choose to believe that as well. Maybe not today, tomorrow, next year, or even 100 years from now, but one day, people will make a genuine attempt to understand each other, and then one day they will succeed. I dream of that day because when everyone is able to understand one another, there will be no need for war." Asia just stared at him with eyes wide in awe. She then smiled softly before claiming, "I believe that's a wonderful dream, Naruto-san." Naruto scratched the back of his head sheepishly at her words. He then admitted, "Thanks, but I know most people think such a thing is naive or impossible. I'll stand by it though. After all, it's why I met you." Asia blinked in confusion before asking, "What do you mean?" Naruto just flicked the silver cross on her chest, ignoring the slight shock that ran through his finger at the brief contact. He then explained, "You are a nun, and I am a devil. Some would say we are destined to be enemies. I'll gladly prove them wrong. To me, it didn't matter that you were a nun. I chose to instead see you as a kind girl willing to heal a complete stranger. All I had to do was look in your eyes to confirm you were a good girl. If someone couldn't see that because of the cross on your chest, then they're idiots." Asia blushed at his words. Looking down to the ground, she gripped her dress as she tried to contain her embarrassment. She'd rarely had someone say things like that to her. People had always praised her power, but had seemed to view her as a simple vessel. Anything good she did was simply expected of the holder of a power like hers. To be complimented so openly felt nice. Naruto then continued despite her looking away, "And you proved me right. I told you I'm a devil, and yet you were still walking alongside me. You didn't scream and throw holy water at me. Instead you have listened to my words. You gave me the benefit of the doubt, despite no doubt being told how evil devils are. For that I thank you, Asia-chan. I should be thanking you, Naruto-san. You've helped me when I was lost," Asia told him with honesty clear in her eyes. "Yeah, but I did go all deep on you. Really doubt you were wanting to listen to be drone on about all this stuff," Naruto remarked apologetically. "No, I really enjoyed it. You are very wise, Naruto-san. Your words are profound and pure. I can't help but want to believe in them," Asia claimed earnestly. That caused Naruto to scratch the back of his head as he explained self-consciously, "Thanks, but that's not really me so much. Not too bright myself. I've just inherited these beliefs from a lot of amazing people. They're the ones you should be praising. Jiraiya, his father, his mother, the third Hokage. They're the ones who paved the way for him. A pure and kind heart is more important than anything else, and I can tell you have that, Naruto-san," Asia stated quickly, looking at him with respect clear in her eyes. "Thanks, Asia-chan," Naruto whispered with a grin, his cheeks flushed slightly at her words. He shook his head to rid himself of the embarrassment her words had provoked in him. Grinning widely, he crossed his arms behind his head as he exclaimed happily, I can't help but be happy right now. If a devil and a nun can meet randomly and become friends, then that's just more reason to believe this entire war between the three factions can be ended if we stopped fighting for a minute to actually talk to each other. Yes, I hope so as well, Asia whispered with a soft smile on her face as she looked at Naruto. Catching sight of something in the distance, Naruto announced, "Well, there it is. It's been abandoned for a few years, but that's the only church in town. I can't accompany you for obvious reasons, but it's pretty easy to get there from here." He said all this while pointing at the church that was resting on top of the nearby hill. "Thank you, Naruto-san. You're a lifesaver," Asia exclaimed in relief at the sight of the church. Turning to him, she grew a bit flustered. She finally managed to tell him, "I'm really glad I met a person like you by coming to Japan. This must be God's will. Not so sure about that, but if that turns out to be true I'll have to thank him someday. I owe him for letting me meet a good girl like you," Naruto replied with a wide grin. Asia blushed again, but quickly declared with an abnormal amount of steel in her voice from what Naruto could tell, "I hope to meet you again, Naruto-san. Even if you are a D-devil, you are a good person. I would like to become friends with you." She ended with a slight blush. "You too, Asia-chan," Naruto replied immediately, grinning happily at the prospect of making a new friend. Thinking for a moment, Naruto told her, "I do volunteer work at the park where we met. Every Thursday after school I tend the plants there. If you ever want to talk, you can find me there. I'm sure we can find other times to hang out." "Thursday, after school. I got it. Thank you, Naruto-san," Asia stated as she gave him another bow. She then reluctantly turned from him and started moving towards the church after taking her suitcase from him. She briefly looked over her shoulder to see Naruto watching her. He gave her a short wave, and she let out a small squeak. As she turned around though, she couldn't help the smile on her face. She certainly hadn't ever expected this to happen, but she was happy that it had. Naruto may be a devil, but she could feel in her heart he was a good person. A coincidental meeting like this has to be a sign from God. Naruto watched her go for several moments before turning around to head to school. He's probably already missed first period since he took his time talking to Asia. Rias won't be happy, but he can deal with it. He made a new friend. That's definitely worth a lecture from Rias. 2 days later, Naruto was instantly on guard when he finished teleporting. His instincts were screaming at him. It only took a few seconds for his senses to pick up just why this situation was sure to turn bad. Naruto had always had a sensitive nose, and becoming a devil only enhanced that feature. So the scent of blood was near overwhelming for him. Then there was the mass amount of malicious intent coming from the last room. Finally he detected a subtle barrier up around the house. Naruto just sighed as he realized something was up. The barrier would stall Rias for a bit, so he'd have to survive on his own for a bit. Not a problem considering the strength of the signature in the next room. Unsealing his armored gloves, he slipped them on reluctantly. This wasn't even supposed to be his job. Rias had really not been happy about his lackadaisical attitude towards school for some reason. When she found out he skipped half a day to nap in the clubroom, she'd punished him by forcing him to attend more clients for a few days. Naruto only had a few clients since his charity work successfully gathered more desire, so Rias decided he'd help the other members attend to their clients. This one was Kaniko's. Of course Naruto would get the fuck-up assignment. Naruto's luck was hit or miss like that. Ready for battle, Naruto stepped into the next room. He stopped before he stepped in a puddle of blood. His eyes quickly traced it to the source, an obviously dead man who was crucified upside down on the wall. Frowning at the brutal display, Naruto looked at the perpetrator. Sinners must be punished. I tried borrowing words of the Bible, a person said as he sat on the couch, facing away from Naruto. He ended his words by looking over his shoulder at Naruto, sticking his tongue out to complete an insane image. Naruto just stared for a moment or two before commenting blandly, "Yep. That's a face that says talking like reasonable people is not an option. You finally came, little devil-kun. I got bored. My name is Fried Selzen," the priest said as he turned to face Naruto. The guy had silver hair, and red eyes that spoke of pure insanity. He was dressed in white priest robes with a dark blue overcoat. Giving Naruto a polite bow, he then showed his loony self by starting a silly dance while singing out, "I am a boy priest, performing exorcisms for mankind." Naruto just stared at him blankly, not humored or put off guard in the least. Instead he nodded at the mutilated corpse before asking calmly, "You do this?" Fried just gave an insane smile as he nodded enthusiastically and claimed, "Yep, yep." There was proof that he was in league with devils. A repeat offender. So I killed him. To combat devils is my job. I highly doubt doing that is your job. You clearly tortured the man, Naruto pointed out evenly. Yeah, so, I got bored waiting for you, you shitty devil. I got kicked out of the church for it after all, Fried screamed out in glee. Oh well, that makes things easier for me, Naruto claimed with a shrug. Putting his hands up in a basic fighting stance, he finished by announcing, "Now I won't need to worry about putting a rabid dog like you down." Ah, what is that? I don't want to hear stuff like that from a devil? Plus, you don't even have any killing intent. I love feeling the intent to kill and be killed. You're just boring, Fried exclaimed with his tongue hanging out like an imbecile. And you're a pest. Killing you is doing the world a favor. I'm doing charity. Killing intent is unneeded here, Naruto explained calmly. Stupid, 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 Fried yelled like a maniac. He then pulled out a gun and a hilt. The hilt then spawned a light sword. Now armed, he continued screaming, "I don't care. I just want to kill shitty devils like you. Killing shitty devils with their shitty faces in shitty ways is my job." Then come try it, you shitty priest, Naruto ordered with a shrug. Fried did just that by charging in with a slash. Naruto calmly leaned out of the way of a slash, and then raised his hands to block the sword of light when it came back around. With Naruto's hands occupied holding back the sword, Fried lifted the gun with his other hand to point it at Naruto. It quickly released a bullet of light towards Naruto's face. A simple twist of his arm allowed Naruto to block the shot with his forearm. The bullet bounced off, burning a hole in his shirt and leaving a small welt on his skin. The light burned a bit, but overall it was an injury Naruto could ignore entirely. The failure of the bullet was clearly a surprise to Fried, allowing Naruto to remove one of his hands from the sword. Fried dodged when Naruto tried to backhand him though. Jumping back, Fried launched a barrage of light bullets at Naruto. Naruto moved forward while calmly using his armored gloves to deflect the shots away from him. Once he got close enough, Naruto was forced to deflect the light sword repeatedly. Fried was swinging it with one hand while continuously firing the gun with the other. Tired of the double assault, Naruto threw a kick at the hand holding the gun. Fried screamed in triumph, swinging the sword to intercept the kick. What would have been a crippling blow failed though when the light sword failed to cut into his thigh deeply. The sword simply stopped due to Naruto's rook defensive capabilities. Able to follow through with his kick, Naruto kicked the gun out of Fried's hand. Jumping after it, the gun was thoroughly destroyed when Naruto landed on it. Turning back to Fried, Naruto got ready again. His thigh was stinging something fierce, but it wasn't a debilitating injury. The cut was long, but shallow. The light was the main problem, but Naruto could easily ignore it. His leg was still at full capability. Fried only had one weapon now as well. Those light bullets may not do much damage, but they were annoying. Like suffering from bee stings during a battle. Now he could focus entirely on the light sword. Oh, the shitty devil has some moves. This is getting me excited. It will make your death all the sweeter, Fried yelled as he jumped at Naruto with his sword raised for an overhand slash. Which was so easy to counter it wasn't even funny. Spinning out of the way at the last moment, Naruto spun his way into Fried's guard. Naruto used the momentum of the spin to fuel an elbow that was right about to connect with Fried's spine. With Naruto's strength it would certainly be broken. Unfortunately Fried proved he actually had a degree of skill to go along with his insanity and bloodlust, which sucked since it only made him more dangerous. Sensing the danger, Fried didn't do the mistake of trying to turn to face Naruto. Instead he just jumped forward into a roll, narrowly dodging the potentially fatal strike to his back. Naruto grunted in annoyance. He'd been aiming to end the fight with that. Oh well. He was about to charge the recovering Fried, but stopped as a scream rang out through the room. Naruto froze, recognizing the two, then turned to look at the one who screamed. Naruto's eyes widened as he saw Asia. She was staring at the mutilated corpse in horror, her hands raised to her mouth. Naruto immediately wondered what she was doing here. Fried admitted to being a stray priest, so why was Asia here? What's happened here? Asia questioned, her voice trembling and her eyes filling with tears. Fried immediately responded by approaching the nun. Throwing an arm over her shoulders, he explained in a glee-filled voice, I see. You're still a beginner. You see, this is our job. This human was collaborating with devils, so we killed him. Then, we ambush the devils that come running. But you? Asia got out before she spotted Naruto. She then exclaimed in shock, Naruto-san. You know this shitty devil? Fried asked with his tongue sticking out again, his eyes darting between Naruto and Asia. What are you doing here? Asia asked in confusion. I could ask you the same thing, Asia-chan, Naruto replied calmly, still not letting his guard down around Fried. Nodding at the corpse, Naruto explained, that man summoned me. When I came, the priest attacked me. Sorry, Asia-chan, but a human and a devil can't interact. Because we can't live without the permission of a fallen angel, Fried stated slyly, leering at Asia. Naruto's thoughts raced at that. Asia was working with a fallen angel. Naruto hadn't even considered that. Naruto still retained a bit of the negative emotion sensing he received from Kurama. Asia just had so little negative emotion in her. Everyone, even good people, had negative emotion. Asia though had about as little as Naruto could figure a person could have without there being something seriously wrong with them. What could such a pure girl do to leave the church? Especially if it meant she became involved with a maniac like Fried? Turning away from Asia, Fried announced with a grin, now let's finish this, shall we? Let's do this. Before Fried could charge again though, Asia ran between him and Naruto. Spreading her arms out wide with her back to Naruto, Asia started to plead desperately, please stop this, father. I'm begging you, don't do this. Sweetie, do you realize what you are doing? Fried demanded in an annoyed tone. Yes, I do, but even if he is a devil Naruto-san is a good person, Asia declared firmly, despite clearly being scared out of her mind. Naruto actually lowered his guard as he took in this new development. Asia quickly continued, Father, I don't believe God would be happy with your actions. Even if that man worked with devils, I don't believe he deserved to die. Especially in such a way. Don't talk shit to me, Fried screamed, finally showing his irritation. Naruto was too shocked by the sudden action to interfere when he swung his light sword down. Luckily the blade didn't bisect Asia, but it did cut open her nun outfit. Even her bra was cut in the middle, which was actually pretty impressive since her skin wasn't even slight cut. The bra was thrown off as her s bounced from their new freedom. Asia immediately covered herself with her arms while letting out a shocked cry, but Fried didn't give her any time to do anything else. Grabbing her arm, he roughly threw her into the wall. Using one hand to hold her arms above her head, he stabbed the light sword through her sleeves. Releasing that hand, he moved it to cup her face as he exclaimed in outrage, you shitty bitch. Do you have worms in your brains? That's a shitty devil. We kill shitty devils. I can't hurt you since the fallen angels have plans for you, but you still clearly deserve punishment. His hand started descending south, but its path was stopped along with his words. It was only due to Fried sensing the danger that he was at least partly able to defend himself. Removing his blade from the wall, he tried to use it to block Naruto's punch. The blow snapped the blade though, and still was able to connect with the stray exorcist's face. Fried was launched back till he collided with the far wall. With his fist still extended, Naruto announced with anger clear in his voice, I'm going to stop you there. 'Cause if you were going to do what I think you were, I would have felt obligated to crush your balls in my hand. I really don't want to touch another man there, so I'm going to finish this before you can do anything rapey. With his eyes fixed on the still recovering Fried, Naruto used his hands to unbutton his shirt. Slipping it off, Naruto left himself bare from the waist up. He then kneeled down and draped it over the exposed Asia's shoulders. Making sure to not look at her very exposed s, Naruto did up one of the buttons. Thankfully the size difference between the two meant that Asia didn't even have to put her arms through the holes. It could just encompass her whole torso. Cover yourself up, I'll handle the shitty priest, Naruto told her as he kept his eyes on Fried. Thank you, Naruto-san, Asia whispered in a wavering voice, obviously shaken by what just happened. Nodding, Naruto stood up to face Fried, who was getting to his feet. The stray exorcist was cradling his already swelling jaw with one hand, his other grasping his light sword, which had restored itself. He was forced to lean on the wall for balance, but the fact that he was standing and not down for the count on the ground is rather impressive. Shitty devil, that hurts. Fried exclaimed in fury. Kind of the point, shitty priest, Naruto replied instantly as he got ready to fight again. He then claimed firmly, my next hit will finish you. That's a promise. Ah, shitty devil thinks he's hot shit now that he landed a shot. I'll make you die a painful death, Fried exclaimed as he readied himself. Unfortunately, Naruto's next hit never came. The exchange was stopped before it started by a large red magic circle forming between them. The members of the Occult Research Club then appeared. Naruto, we've come as soon as we could. Era, what a problem we have here. Exorcist, seems you had some trouble, Naruto-kun. Naruto just deadpanned at the group before muttering, you guys have really bad timing. Another 10 seconds and that guy would have been knocked out on the floor with a fractured skull. Rias slumped slightly at his words, a bit put out by the remark. She then informed with seriously, a barrier was put up. We couldn't tell what the situation was, so we came as quickly as we could. Better safe than sorry. I know, just pointing out that the timing was bad, Naruto commented with a remark. He then looked at Fried before adding, this guy really needs to be put down. Oh look, the entire shitty devil group arrived. How wonderful. Hunting you shitty worms is what I live for. Now just stay quiet and let me kill you, Fried exclaimed, once more slipping into his more insane mindset. What a foul mouth. Seems you are one of those types. The types that causes the most trouble, Rias muttered as she looked at Fried. Fried opened his mouth to reply, but was cut off when Rias sent a blast of dark red energy at him. He barely managed to dodge, the spell disintegrating a portion of the wall instead. Rias was engulfed in a red energy as she muttered in a quiet anger, vulgar scum like you, anger me to no end. Fried backed away as he felt the amount of energy Rias was releasing. He seemed to finally realize his situation. Outnumbered by devils, several no doubt stronger than him. Even someone like Fried didn't like those odds. He grumbled to himself nervously as he continued backing away. Isn't all that power kind of dangerous? Isn't she really dangerous? Once again Fried's end was postponed at the last second. This time by a dark blue and purple portal of some kind forming on the ceiling above him. Kaneko was the one to announce after sniffing a few times, multiple fallen angels coming. Bucko. Rias just frowned before ordering, retreat. Akeno, prepare the jump. There's no reason for us to start a fight with multiple fallen angels. Naruto blinked before exclaiming loudly, Rias-chan. We need to get Asia-chan out of here as well. He moved to crouch down beside Asia to make it clear who he meant. Rias' eyes hardened slightly when they fell on Asia, focusing briefly on the nun veil she was wearing. She then announced sternly, we can't. Only those of my clan can jump with this circle. Growling, Naruto crouched down in front of Asia. Looking over his shoulder, he barked out at her resolutely, Asia-chan. Get up on my back. Asia was clearly confused, but instinctively listened to the authority in his voice. Climbing on his back, Naruto grasped her thighs to hold her better. He then stood up completely. What are you doing, Naruto? Rias demanded, clearly not pleased by his actions. Naruto didn't back down though and growled out, if Asia can't teleport with us, I'll carry her out of here. You can't. She's allied with the fallen angels. They'll come to get her, Rias declared with a prominent frown on her face. Then let them come. I'm not going to leave Asia anywhere near that maniac. Plus, the fallen angels apparently have plans for her. That doesn't sound like anything good to me, Naruto quickly argued. Only more reason to leave her here. The fallen angels will chase after you. You won't be able to escape them, Rias urged desperately. I don't care. I'm not leaving Asia with them, Naruto proclaimed with steel in his voice. He then punctuated his statement by running out the door. Damn it, that idiot, Rias snapped, biting her lower lip. The fallen angels are almost here. They'll chase after Naruto. She could have the rest of them join him, but that would definitely result in a fight. They can't possibly escape the fallen angels by flying. The only one who can run as fast or faster than Naruto is. Don't worry, bucko. I'll bring Naruto back to the club, Yuto promised as he stepped out of the magic circle. He then quickly dashed out of the door as well. Rias was not reassured, but knew she didn't have more time to think. Uttering a curse, Rias let the teleportation finish and disappeared from the room. She could do nothing but wait for now. Naruto. That caused Naruto to look over his shoulder, recognizing Yuto's voice. Seeing the Bishonen running to catch up to him, Naruto demanded immediately, "Yuto, what are you doing? Why didn't you go back with Rias-chan? Well, someone had to make sure you make it out of this in one piece. You did just basically call out the fallen angels by taking one of their servants," Yuto pointed out as the two ran down the street at speeds no human could match. "I can handle myself," Naruto grunted out stubbornly, but then added begrudgingly, "Thanks though. What are friends for if not to bail you out of trouble when you do something stupid?" Yuto remarked with a chuckle. Anyo, Naruto-san. You don't have to do this. I'll go back to the fallen angels." Asia spoke up hesitantly, finally recovered enough to speak up. "You don't mean that. I can sense how scared you are," Naruto claimed quickly. Asia wavered at that, but still managed to claim, I know. I am scared, but I don't want to get Naruto-san in trouble. Even if that means I have to go back with the fallen angels." "Fuck that," Naruto snapped right away. He then continued firmly, "I can tell they have no good intentions for you, Asia-chan. I have no intention of letting a good girl like you suffer at their hands. It will take a lot more than a few fallen angels to intimidate me." "A whole lot more." Asia didn't respond immediately. Finally lowering her face into the crook of his neck, she whispered with tears gathering in her eyes, "Thank you, Naruto-san." "No problem. You're my friend after all, and I never abandon my friends," Naruto replied, grinning widely despite the fact that she couldn't see it. "Naruto. Fallen angels approaching fast," Yuto exclaimed as he peeked over his shoulder. "How many?" "4, Yuto announced. "Crap," Naruto cursed as he absorbed that information. Maneuvering his arms and twisting his torso, Naruto plucked Asia from his back. She squeaked at the sudden shift, but didn't struggle against him thankfully. He quickly positioned Asia in front of him, pressing her head against his chest. Since he was still bare-chested from loaning Asia his shirt, this caused the nun to blush at the intimate contact. With one arm still hooked under her knees and his other wrapped around her shoulders and head, Naruto did his best to shield her tiny body with his torso. Not a moment too soon either. Naruto felt like his back was being pelted with rocks as light spears rained around him, the spears cracking the concrete where they hit. His rook enhancements once again came in handy, the spears that hit him just bouncing off. They left small punctures on his back, but nothing that could be called a real injury. Asia had been shielded entirely by Naruto, and Yuto had dashed to the side to evade the cluster attack. Yuto jumped back to Naruto's side after the hail of spears ended. He then questioned urgently, "We can't lose them like this, Naruto. What do we do?" Naruto cursed as he accepted Yuto's words. Both of them were on foot, while the fallen angels were flying after them. Naruto was carrying Asia, who while light still slowed him down. Yuto couldn't go his full speed either due to needing to stay with Naruto. Any more thoughts were ended when Yuto called out desperately, "Look out." The warning came too late for Naruto, who cried out as he felt pain in his arm and leg. Instead of the hail of spears from before, this time only 4 spears launched at them. 2 at Yuto and 2 for Naruto. Yuto managed to dodge his with a jump, but Naruto had less warning and had to protect Asia. So one of the spears sank into the back of his right thigh, and the other one cut into his left arm as it passed him by. Now these hurt. Naruto could still function, but these aren't little bug bites he can ignore. These will affect him. Damn, he'd gotten overconfident. His rook defense had been enough to block almost everything tonight. He should have suspected fallen angels could enhance their light attacks to a point they would hurt him. Stumbling, Naruto had to move into a forward roll to not land right on Asia. Asia still cried out at the disorientating sensation, but the roll allowed Naruto to resume his run quickly. He then reached down and ripped out the light spear that was still stuck in his leg. Light weapons will gradually saturate a devil's blood if they remain in their bodies, acting like a poison. Throwing the spear away, Naruto yelled to the concerned Yuto, "Split up. You can't go full speed when with me, and I can't be as stealthy with you. They have 4 sets of eyes on us right now, we need to split that up. Use the back alleys to block their sight of you from the sky, and don't go straight. Keep moving randomly till you lose them." Yuto looked hesitant, but eventually nodded. When they came to a split in the road, the two separated. Naruto then moved into the first side alley he came to. He knew this part of town, so he was confident that he wouldn't hit any dead ends. The buildings would also hide him at certain angles from the fallen angels. As Naruto set out to lose his pursuers, he cursed at the leg wound. While certainly better than catching that spear in the back of the head, spine, or heart, the leg still sucked. Naruto's mobility was effectively crippled. He could still run and jump, but not at the level he was used to. So he did his best to be the cunning rascal that had outrun Anbu as a kid. Taking a random route, Naruto took as many turns as possible, avoiding open areas. If only he had mastered the transparent escape technique, this would be easy, but he hadn't managed it yet despite training a bit in it. So he just had to deal. After 10 minutes of this runaround, Naruto finally pressed himself into a dark corner of a narrow alley as he checked to see if any fallen angels were still on his trail. Not seeing any, Naruto's mind raced. Asia-chan, you said your sacred gear can heal all who are injured, right? Can you heal devils as well? Naruto asked in a whisper to the girl still held in his arms. Asia said blankly as she processed his words. She finally nodded and claimed, yes. I can. Okay, good. I need you to heal my leg. My speed and mobility is too hampered with my leg injured. If it is healed, I'm confident I can lose any fallen angels still looking for us. Naruto informed her quietly, his eyes still darting around. Understood, Naruto-san. It will only take a minute, Asia declared firmly, looking relieved that she could help him somehow. No, not here, Naruto muttered to her before clarifying, the fallen angels are still surely looking for us. If they find us here, we'll be trapped like rats. The park is nearby. If they find us, that will be the better area to fight. With that spoken, Naruto once again started moving through the alleys. Seeing the park in front of him, he dashed at top speed through the open area between the alley and the park. Not stopping once he entered the trees, Naruto kept going till he was a minute's run into the dense trees. He then allowed himself to come to a stop. Letting Asia down, the nun quickly kneeled down to examine the wound in his leg. She gasped at the sight as Naruto grimaced. Devils were really weak to light, and running for 10 minutes afterwards didn't help the wound at all. The large gash in his thigh was deep. Much of it seemed burned from the light, but the run had ripped the burns open to allow blood to pour out. It was not pretty. Naruto was rather surprised he had managed to move as well as he had with his leg in such a condition. Asia placed her hands over the injury. 2 rings appeared on her hands as a green light appeared. Naruto let out a sigh as the pain from the wound faded slightly. It didn't even feel weird or anything. The pain and wound were just disappearing. Before Asia could even get halfway through though, Naruto cursed as he felt a surge of power. A barrier had just been erected over this portion of the park. Naruto interrupted Asia's healing by lifting her up by grabbing under her arms. He then gently pushed her towards the trees as he ordered her, a fallen angel is here. Hide behind a tree. Don't make any noise or try to get close enough to see. I'll deal with the fallen angel. I'll call for you when I'm done. But, Naruto-san, you are still injured, Asia exclaimed in concern. Naruto just shot her a grin and lightly slapped his thigh before commenting, you healed me up quite a bit. I barely even feel it anymore. I can easily handle a fallen angel with just this scratch. It was a pretty blatant lie. She hadn't nearly healed it enough to restore his full mobility or erase all the pain, but it would have to be enough. Asia was clearly still worried as well, but the determined look in his eyes was enough to get her to hide behind a tree. With Asia somewhat safe, Naruto started walking towards a nearby clearing where he felt a power signature. Walking into the open, Naruto quickly examined the fallen angel standing in the middle of the clearing with his wings out. It was a middle-aged man with short black hair. He was wearing a black trench coat, a white undershirt, black pants, and a black fedora on his head. I knew you would come here, the man claimed with a grin as Naruto revealed himself. Naruto stayed quiet, so he continued, we lost you in the alleys, but I knew you would come here. It's the most open space. The only space we can have a proper fight in. So all I had to do was fly above and wait till you came. Which you did. I didn't come here to fight, Naruto grunted out. But you did, the man declared with a wide grin on his face. He then elaborated, I could sense it. You fought freed. You are a warrior, and warriors don't hide in alleys like rats. You were aching for a fight, which is why you came here. A warrior can only let loose in an area like this. Naruto scowled at his words, but couldn't quite deny them. He did come here because it would allow him to go all out if a fallen angel had managed to track them. He didn't come here to fight though. He would have gladly gone without another fight this night if he could have. Deciding to move on, Naruto asked with a tilted head, "What's with the barrier? I don't sense any of your fallen angel friends in here." "Of course not. Why would I let any of those bitches interrupt my fun? I haven't had a good fight in ages. I knew you would satisfy my battle lust. You even gave me the perfect excuse to kill you by taking that useless nun Rainier is obsessed with. I don't want Rainier or the other bitches to interfere though. I don't give two fucks about that foolish girl. Maybe one fuck, but then I just throw her away like the trash weaklings like her are. So I put up the barrier. Now we can fight to our heart's content. It will only come down when I release it, which will be when you are on the ground dead," the man explained in satisfaction. "Or you are," Naruto growled out, pissed at the insinuations he made concerning Asia. "Of course, but that won't happen," the man exclaimed, seemingly growing more excited by the second. He quickly added, "Don't die too quickly. I'd hate to have to take out my anger on that little nun because you didn't entertain me enough." Naruto felt his anger grow even more at his words, but restrained himself. This Donasek was both arrogant and sure that he was going to kill Naruto. That's a recipe for some loose lips. This was an opportunity to gain some information. So Naruto quickly questioned, "Why do you all plan to do with Asia-chan? She has no combat abilities. I have no interest in her whatsoever, but Rainier does. Claims that her sacred gear will come in handy. Considering she ran with you though, I bet Rainier is going to resort to desperate measures," Donasek answered without any care whatsoever as to the information he was giving away. "Desperate measures? What do you mean?" Naruto immediately demanded, knowing that he wasn't going to like the answer. "Let's just say that your nun won't be able to make any escape attempts again," Donasek stated with a smirk. He then shrugged and added, "As I said though, I don't really care. I only joined with Rainier for a chance to fight. The Grigori is so annoying, ordering us to avoid starting any fights. If that means I have to help some bitch with a nun, then so be it." Naruto was now barely restraining himself from attacking the man. He was just like Freed. He didn't care at all for anything else than satisfying his own desires. He was willing to hurt Asia just so he could fight. Between Donasek and Freed, Naruto knew he couldn't let Asia go back with them. This Rainier person only solidified that decision. With Naruto silent, Donasek acted. Forming a light spear in one hand, he then used his other to remove his hat. Giving a polite bow, he gave Naruto a patronizing smile as he informed him, "Since I'm a gentleman, I'll let you know the name of your killer. I am Donasek." Frowning, Naruto replied as he got into a fighting stance, "Uzumaki Naruto, and I won't let you take Asia-chan." Blah, blah, blah. Enough with the talking. Let's get to the fighting. Donasek screamed, seemingly reaching the end of his patience. Jumping, his wings flapped to keep him airborne. Wanting to make the first move, Naruto shot at him. Grunting at the pain in his thigh, Naruto threw his fist forward with all his rook strength. Donasek blocked it with his light spear, but grunted as his arms caved behind it. The spear pushed into his stomach and his body went flying backwards through the air. He managed to recover before he collided with a tree by flapping his wings though. That caused Naruto to frown. The weapon didn't break, meaning it is one of the ones that can hurt him deeply. There was also the matter of dealing Donasek damage. With him staying in the air, the power behind Naruto's attacks are diffused greatly. He'll just get pushed back. Naruto's leg injury also meant he didn't have the explosive power for a straightforward attack to be successful. Donasek didn't give him any more time to think by flying at him with a gleeful laugh. Naruto immediately had to dodge the barrage of thrusts from the spear, using his armored gloves to block that which he couldn't dodge. There weren't any openings for Naruto to take advantage of. Donasek isn't that bad with melee combat. Looks like Naruto will have to be a bit creative. Donasek let out a cry of triumph when he felt his spear connect with Naruto's chest, but the cry was cut forth when he found a log on the other end of his weapon. Looking at it in confusion, Donasek tried to turn when he sensed Naruto approaching. Too bad he forgot about the log on the other end of his weapon, the weight preventing him from bringing it to bear quickly enough. So Donasek could only lift his other hand in a block, which was broken by the force behind Naruto's flying kick. Naruto's foot connected solidly with Donasek's chest. The fallen angel was sent flying and couldn't recover before his back connected with a tree barely 10 feet behind him. The tree broke under the pressure, and it toppled under Donasek. Naruto figured that was probably enough, but was quickly proven wrong when Donasek flew back into the air while laughing in delight. He then declared with a bit of blood leaking from the side of his mouth, "Yes, that's it. Struggle. It will make your death even more satisfying." The fallen angel then dived at Naruto again, blocking the series of strikes Donasek sent at him. Naruto decided that being creative was a better option than standing still. So he jumped back away from the fallen angel. When the winged man followed him, Naruto started jumping through the trees and branches. Naruto was from Konoha, Datbeo. A forest is his home turf, as shown by the fact that Donasek lost sight of Naruto within seconds. Looking around, Donasek yelled out in annoyance to his unseen opponent, "Hiding like a rat again. Seems you aren't as much of a warrior as I thought." Hearing noise behind him, he spun around with a grin. The grin dropped when he saw just what had made the noise. Naruto was standing there 20 meters away. The noise was from him ripping a small boulder from the ground and chucking it at Donasek. Caught off guard by the unexpected attack, Donasek tried to deflect the boulder with his light spear. That didn't work so well. The weight of the boulder and the force by which it had been thrown made the idea of deflecting it ridiculous. The light spear broke and the boulder collided with Donasek's shoulder. The fallen angel let out a cry as he felt something crack, simultaneously entering an uncontrollable spin from the impact on one side of his body. He only stopped when he fell to the ground. Shaking his head to gather his bearings, Donasek snarled at Naruto. Lifting his good arm, he formed a dozen light spears in the air above him. A simple flick of his wrist sent them at Naruto. Naruto just contemptuously swiped his arm at them, the weak light spears shattering. Growling, Donasek got to his feet and jumped at Naruto while forming a single light spear in his hand. The reckless attack was easy for Naruto to dodge. Jumping straight into the air, Naruto flipped so his feet landed on the underside of a thick branch. Using that, Naruto changed his direction by leaping down. Flipping once again, Naruto landed with a powerful stomp to the ground. Donasek barely prevented his head from being turned to mush by rolling. He then swung his light spear at Naruto's neck. Leaning out of the way, Naruto then leaned in and nailed Donasek with a lightning-fast jab. With Naruto's rook strength, even that was enough to send Donasek flying backwards. Skidding on the ground, it was a rough on Donasek's wings. The fallen angel struggled to his feet with another growl, his wings aching from dragging on the ground. Seeing Naruto just standing there, Donasek once again sent a hail of light spears at Naruto. And Naruto once again easily destroyed them when they got within his range. Shooting a smirk at Donasek, Naruto practically melted into the shadows of the forest. Donasek growled at the action but didn't move. He wasn't going to walk into another trap. Instead he stayed still, searching for his infuriating devil opponent. Nothing happened for a minute. Suddenly Donasek spun when he heard a cacophony of sound, ready to dodge whatever trick his opponent was throwing at him. His jaw dropped at the sight that greeted him. He had certainly not expected this. Naruto had gone to the tree he had broken with Donasek's body earlier. Picking it up, he proceeded to chuck it at the fallen angel. The entire, fully grown tree. Maybe not as hard as a rock and more unwieldy to throw, but dodging a tree bearing down on you is practically impossible. Something Donasek found out when he failed to clear the large mass of branches at the top of the tree turned projectile. The fallen angel found himself crushed and buried by the tree. Naruto breathed deeply as he looked at the tree. Pretty sure he tore something in his shoulder with that move, but it was so worth it. Donasek's face was priceless. Super strength really is awesome. Naruto's eye twitched when he heard movement from the tree. He then watched as a sword of light cut through part of the branches, allowing Donasek to burst out. Naruto took great pleasure in seeing the fallen angel's current state though. Donasek's clothes and skin was rife with cuts and scuffs from the branches. His hat was also gone, his hair instead filled with twigs that made the man look comical. "You little piece of shit devil," Donasek roared out in anger. Naruto didn't react though, instead smirking as he commented, "Looks like I'll be the one to walk away from here, huh Donna bitch?" Donasek growled at the insult, but couldn't refute the point. Naruto had the complete advantage. Donasek was in rough shape, and Naruto's only injuries were those he had accrued before this fight. Naruto was simply too much for Danasek to handle. Naruto was far better at fighting among trees, and had many tricks up his sleeves that gave him a huge advantage in an indirect battle. Straight combat also favored Naruto. Naruto was fast and skilled enough that Danasek could only hit him if he used widespread light weapon attacks, but the weapons for such an attack were too weak to get past his defense. Only if he condenses all that power in a single weapon can he damage Naruto, but he couldn't hit Naruto with only a single weapon. It was a case of whether to hit but do no damage or not hit at all. All the while Naruto was damaging him with repeated attacks. Danasek really didn't know what to do till he saw a flash of color. A vicious smile immediately crossed his face. Morphing the light sword in his hand into a spear, he pulled his arm back and chucked it. Naruto dodged the attack with contemptuous ease, but he then saw Danasek's smirk. A heavy weight forming in his gut, Naruto spun to look at where the spear was headed. His heart skipped a beat at what he saw. Asia. Their battle had wandered close to her hiding position, and she had tried moving away. Danasek's attack wasn't headed for him, but Asia. Ignoring the agony in his thigh, Naruto forced his body to move as fast as possible. No, even faster. He had to reach it in time. He had to. Reaching out his hand desperately, Naruto gave a cry of victory as his hand managed to close around the very end of the spear. The spear's trajectory came to a stop just a foot from Asia's head. The nun fell back onto her butt in shock at her near death, and Naruto let out a sigh of relief. Until he coughed out blood. Eyes wide in pain and shock, Naruto lowered his head to see a blade emerging from the left side of his chest, right where his heart is. It had been a distraction. A way to provide an opportunity to strike. Looks like I'll be the one leaving, little devil, Danasek whispered in satisfaction from behind Naruto. Asia let out a horrified scream as she realized what had happened. Naruto's arm shook from where he was still holding onto the light spear. Naruto coughed up another glob of blood. Danasek began to laugh at his victory. Until Naruto spun the spear in his hand and stabbed it behind him. Danasek gave a pained grunt as his own weapon sank into his stomach. He then groaned out in anger, how dare you? My own, weapon. Even if you stab me through the heart, I won't let you take Asia, Naruto growled out, ignoring the blood welling up in his throat. Danasek stumbled back, the weapons being pulled out of their respective torsos. Gripping the spear tightly in his hand, Naruto felt as it started disappearing. Danasek wasn't going to let him use it again. Gritting his teeth, Naruto channeled his own magic into it. The previously bluish-white spear turned to golden-white as it came back with a vengeance. Spinning around, Naruto thrust the light spear at Danasek with all that remained of his rapidly fading strength. Danasek countered by doing the same with his own weapon. The two roared as they did one last exchange. Omake. Rias paused as her hand touched the doorknob to the clubroom. Tilting her head, she listened as she heard Naruto's voice talking aloud with exaggerated emotions and moans. Yes, Suna cried out in ecstasy, feeling herself approaching another peak. She then added, harder. Harder. I'm about to come. Hearing this, Jiraiya followed the demand. Using his powerful legs, he thrust into Suna's core with even more passion. The two felt themselves reach their climax. In unison, the two cried out their pleasure to the world. Blushing slightly, Rias walked into the room in a panic. She immediately saw Naruto laying down on one of the couches, an orange book in his hands. Hearing her entrance, Naruto looked up. He stared at her blankly before saying nonchalantly, "Sup, Rias-chan." "What are you doing?" Rias demanded in embarrassment. What was her rook doing reading Icha out loud in the clubroom while alone? She was not going to clean up any stains on those couches. Rubbing the back of her head in embarrassment, Naruto told her sheepishly, see. I had this thought. God has to be celibate and all that jazz, right? So he's clearly not had any hanky-panky in a while. Being the good Samaritan I am, I decided to give him something to fantasize about. So I'm kind of reading him a particularly steamy scene from Icha Journey. Rias just stared with a gaping jaw. Was he insane? Reading her thoughts, Naruto nodded before declaring proudly, yes, I am insane, but I'm also the only guy on Earth with the balls necessary to troll God. So I'll accept being insane. Now, if that is all, I need to finish this scene. Oh, another great idea. Why don't you help me? You can moan along and stuff. Do the female voice. It will be amazing. Rias just stared as Naruto started to rave about this new idea. She just turned and walked out the room. She was not going to mess with God like that. Damn, Naruto is crazy. Baiting the biblical God like that. That does take balls though. Big, brass ones. Even she could admit that. Archangel Michael had his face buried in his hands as he sat in his private quarters. A knock came from the door, before a female walked in while asking in concern, "Michael, is everything okay? You just randomly froze up, blushed, and walked in here 30 minutes ago." Michael didn't respond for a few seconds. He then replied in a tired voice, "Gabriel, just please, leave me alone right now, your presence isn't helping." Gabriel was concerned, but decided to leave her brother alone. As the door closed behind her, Michael let out another sigh. How long was this reading supposed to last? This was even worse than what the weirdest devil he's ever met usually does. At least Gabriel left him alone. This scene happened to be a brother-sister incest scene, no doubt chosen for the taboo of it. Needless to say, the last person he wanted to see right now is his sister, who is regarded as the most beautiful woman in heaven. That was just asking for trouble. What would happen if he did succumb? He is the center of the heaven system right now? Could he even fall? Ah, bad thoughts. Bad thoughts. Think of old, wrinkly testicles. Ew. He is so going to get the cause of his torment back for this. His natural magnetism for perverts is going to multiply by 10. 10. May he drown in perverts. Naruto shivered suddenly. Ah crap, he has a bad feeling. Guess it was only inevitable. Maybe he is a masochist. Why else would he do something guaranteed to come to bite him in the ass? Nah. This is just him being a prankster. Now how is he going to escalate this battle between him and God next? Interestingly, it was a strand of hair that woke Naruto up. It was tickling his nose. Scrunching his nose up, he shook his head to try and remove it. Even that failed, so he mustered up the strength to raise an arm to move it. Grabbing the strand of hair, he flicked it away. That seemed to be enough to force the darkness away from him though, and he couldn't get back to sleep. So he sighed before opening his eyes. Closing them from the bright glare from the window, he gradually opened his eyes. Blinking blankly, he sat up. He blinked in confusion as he looked around the unfamiliar room. He was lying in a large Victorian bed, in a smallish room that only had a large dresser otherwise. There was window that was letting in the light, showing that the sun was at the point it was just about to sink beyond the horizon. Any more thoughts were cut off when Naruto shifted his body and his hand fell onto something squishy. Tilting his head in wonder, he squeezed the object again. A soft moan punctuated the action. Having a suspicion on what it is, he turned to look himself. Yep, it is Rias, and he's groping one of her ass. That was made easier by the fact that she was naked. Naruto questioned why he was in bed with a naked Rias, but his brain wasn't quite functioning too well at the moment. Instead his thought wandered to her niece. Very nice. Quite large, but still maintaining a very appealing shape. They sat perky and round on her chest, despite her laying on her back. No prominent veins or discolorations. Her cute little pink S were perfectly positioned. Each breath she took caused them to jiggle enticingly. With another tilt of his head, Naruto's hand took a quick squeeze. Firm, with a superior elasticity. These are some grade AS. Right up there with Samui and Shion. Ria's crimson hair was also stunning in how it spread around her. Her cute face was relaxed and content in her sleep. It's a pretty large contrast to her serious and stressed look he usually sees on her face. Her thin waist was shown, but her hips and legs were covered by the blanket. Naruto blinked in shock as his brain finally started to work properly instead of absently admiring the scene he was treated to. Why was he in bed with Rias? Why was she naked? And what happened with the fallen angel, Donasek? Wait, Asia, son of a bitch. Era, it appears Naruto-kun has woken up. Akano announced as the shout rang out through the old school building. And it doesn't appear he is happy either, Yuto commented with an anxious chuckle. Not a surprise. Senpei is passionate and loud, Kaneko muttered as she stopped eating her snack. Probably not a good idea right now. Any more dialogue was cut off when the door to Rias' room burst open, revealing Naruto in all his glory. His head looked around rapidly before settling on Yuto. Naruto immediately demanded, "Yuto, what happened? Where's Asia? Yuto lowered his gaze at the question, forcing Naruto's heart to clench. It was practically unnecessary when Yuto answered simply, "Things did not end well, Naruto." Naruto immediately growled out, "What happened?" "Calm down, Naruto-kun," a new voice ordered. Naruto turned to see Rias appearing from behind him. Not a surprise. He did yell out right next to her. Not much chance of her not sleeping through that. She didn't even bother covering her nudity, instead locking eyes with him intently and continuing, "We'll tell you what you want to know, so calm down. I really doubt you want an explanation while in the nude." Naruto blinked before looking down. He then groaned out, "Ah, crap." Turns out he had been naked as well, and hadn't even noticed. He had some bandages around his chest and his right thigh, but he was otherwise bare. Great, he just flashed the entire club. Turning around, he walked back into the room and shut the door behind him. Era. Naruto-kun is as much man as the rumors state. Akeno commented with her amusement clear, a hand raised to cover her salacious grin. Kaniko's eyes just twitched as the image replayed in her mind. That was more of her annoying senpai than she wanted to see, and caused a thought to pop into her head. Her eyes moved to Rias' exposed chest, which seemed to jiggle for no reason when she looked at it. Another twitch of her eyebrow. Her eyes then moved to Akino's chest. Another eye twitch. She then looked down at her own chest. "Our club is a gathering ground for oversized UAL organs," she grumbled as she protectively cupped her own lacking chest. She then added, "There's nothing wrong with being small, right Yuto?" "Hey," Yuto immediately protested, not happy at her insinuation about his size. Rias just shook her head. Pinching the brow of her nose, she told them, "Akeno, can you get me a uniform? Everyone else, ready yourself. I doubt this is going to be a fun conversation." 5 minutes later Naruto was sitting on one of the couches, Kaniko next to him. He was dressed in the academy uniform. Anyone could tell by his body language though that he was barely restraining himself from freaking out. Looking at Yuto, Naruto growled out impatiently, "Yuto, what happened?" Sighing, Yuto answered carefully, "Well, you beat the fallen angel you were fighting, kind of. He was dead, but it was clear you were about to join him." "I mean, what happened to Asia?" Naruto grunted out irritably. "Just keep calm, Naruto-kun. Let Yuto explain," Rias ordered in a scolding tone. Naruto frowned, but waited as Yuto began, "After we split up, I did my best to lose the fallen angels that were chasing me. I succeeded and then went to try and find you. Except I couldn't. Your signature was just gone. Donasek put up a barrier to prevent anyone from interfering," Naruto informed them. "I figured. Either way, it wasn't till the barrier dropped that I could sense you. I arrived right at the same time as the fallen angels. The fallen angel was dead, but you were on the ground with 2 gaping holes in your chest. One through your heart. The nun was healing you." Yuto hesitated here before slowly continuing, "The other 3 fallen angels got there at the same time. I got ready to fight them, but they claimed that they didn't want to fight. They announced that as long as the nun went with them, they would leave us peacefully. The nun agreed, and went with them." "And you let her go?" Naruto demanded, outraged. "What did you want me to do, Naruto?" Yuto asked with a grimace that showed he wasn't happy about his actions either. Naruto clearly cared enough about the nun to risk his life for her, and he had clearly failed his friend by letting her go. He elaborated regretfully, "There were 3 of them, Naruto. Even if we ignore the political implications of battling with the fallen angels, I couldn't have won. Not outnumbered like that, especially since I would have had to defend you and the nun. If I had tried to fight, the same thing would have happened. Except you and I wouldn't be here." Naruto wanted to protest, to rage against Yuto's words, but he couldn't. There was nothing Yuto could have done. He'd simply made the best of a bad situation. Seeing Naruto and Yuto weren't going to speak, Rias explained, "You were critically injured, Naruto-kun. A deep gash in your leg, 2 stab wounds to your torso, one of which nicked your heart. The only reason you survived is because the nun managed to heal the damage to your heart before she was taken away. As it is, you only barely made it." Yuto quickly added, "Bucko spent all night with you. She ran out of energy, and Akeno had to replace her. Akeno then ran out several hours ago, and Bucko had to step in again. You've been asleep for 18 hours. You still aren't completely healed." Naruto grimaced at that, and looked at his chest. The wounds were mainly gone, but they were still very tender. Hard to believe he'd had 2 holes in his chest the previous night. It was like having Kurama inside of him again. Now we need to discuss your punishment, Rias announced, showing her displeasure as she looked at him. Seeing Naruto's baffled look, she explained sternly, you picked a fight with the fallen angels by kidnapping one of their servants. Even if she wanted your help, what you did was irresponsible and dangerous. You also directly disobeyed me. I cannot let behavior like that go off without punishment. Naruto lowered his head at her words, his bangs shadowing his eyes. He gritted his teeth before muttering, then double it. Rias blinked in confusion before asking, what? I said double it, Naruto replied. Standing up, he declared firmly, double whatever punishment you have in mind because I'm about to pick another fight with the fallen angels. I'm going to go rescue Asia, and this time I won't fail. No, Rias yelled, shooting to her feet and slamming her hands down on her desk HRSHLY. She then told him sternly, you are part of my peerage, and thus part of my household. Your actions aren't just your own, Naruto. They reflect upon me and my entire family. It's a miracle that things didn't spiral out of control yesterday already. You kidnapped one of their servants, and then killed a fallen angel. The only reason they backed off after getting the nun is because they were no doubt thinking you wouldn't last the night. If you attack them again, the implications could be catastrophic. Then kick me out of your household, Naruto immediately barked out before continuing defiantly, disown me. Hell, I'll even let you rip your rook piece out of me tomorrow. I don't care what the consequences are for me. Naruto was cut off when Rias' open hand connected with his cheek. Naruto blinked in shock as his cheek stung. He then looked at Rias with wide eyes as she hissed out with barely controlled emotions heavy in her voice, don't even talk about that. You aren't thinking straight right now. You are letting your emotions rule you. Touching his bright red cheek, Naruto's eyes only grew more determined as he whispered, I am. My emotions have always guided me. That isn't a bad thing in my opinion though. I refuse to sit here calmly while a friend needs me, I will save Asia. I'm not going to let them hurt her simply because I'm afraid of the fallout. Because I know, in my heart, that is the right thing to do. Turning his back on Rias, Naruto started walking to the door as he added, you stay here and do the logical thing. Disown me, I will follow my heart, and go save Asia. If you go, you will almost certainly die. Rias told him angrily, barely holding in her disbelief at her servant completely going against her orders. She quickly elaborated when she saw Naruto stop, you nearly died fighting one fallen angel. There are at least 3 more guarding the nun, and who knows how many stray exorcists or other servants. I have no doubt you've kept secrets from me. Kept certain abilities hidden, but trying to assault a fallen angel base alone is practically a suicide mission. No matter what things you have kept hidden, there is a strong chance you will die. You act like I'm afraid of death, Naruto remarked after a few seconds of silence. Without looking back, he continued, I already embraced death once, and have faced it down dozens of other times. No, I'm not afraid of death, what I'm afraid of is a future where I can't look myself in the mirror for shame. Of a future where I let a silly little thing like a fear of dying keep me from doing what I believe is right. I'd rather die tonight than live a life like that. He started walking again. Ria's hands shook as she saw Naruto continue walking towards the door. Finally she just yelled desperately, you are being stupid. Naruto once again paused, this time right in the middle of the doorframe. Chuckling, he replied with a shrug, maybe I am. It's a good thing I never claimed to be smart then because if being smart means letting an innocent girl be killed, I'd prefer to be an idiot for the rest of my life. And with that, he was gone. Rias just stared at the door for several moments before slowly sitting down in a daze. She then leaned forward and put her face in her hands. A massive sigh escaped her lips as her mind raced in disbelief. Sensing Akeno appear behind her, Rias asked in a depressed voice, what should I do, Akeno? Era, bucko asking for advice? Just like a month ago. What an interesting month it has been, Akeno commented airily. Please, Akeno, just be serious, Rias pleaded before waving a hand and continuing, Naruto and I have been getting along. We joke around, tease each other, yet now he's disobeying my orders, practically ordering me to announce him astray. I don't get how things could have gone bottom up so quickly. Akeno sighed as she realized just how distressed Rias was by this turn of events. So she finally spoke up seriously. No offense, Rias, but you are the only one here that is surprised by Naruto's actions. Can you seriously claim you didn't think Naruto would go stomping out of that door when he learned this Asia was back with the fallen angels? What would make you think Naruto would willingly pick a fight with fallen angels to save some random girl? Rias questioned in disbelief, not understanding what Akeno meant. You are thinking too exact, Rias. It's not about whether we knew he would pick a fight with fallen angels to save a random girl. What we knew was that Naruto would do his best to help his friends. That's what is going on. Naruto is going to help his friend. The fallen angels. That she is a nun. Those are just details in his mind. He's going to help his friend. That's the only thing going through his mind. Akeno explained like it was obvious. But she isn't his friend, Rias argued. You saw how protective Naruto-kun was of her. Do you really believe they hadn't met before? Akeno asked with a raised eyebrow. When Rias didn't reply, she continued, it's pretty obvious that Naruto met that girl before. Maybe she is one of the friends he'd made during his volunteer work. Or not. Either way, Naruto seems to consider her his friend. Okay, fine. She's his friend, but that still doesn't change the fact that he directly disobeyed me, Rias stated in annoyance. You really don't know Naruto-kun, do you, Rias? Akeno asked, clearly not happy at Rias' statement. What is that supposed to mean? Rias demanded, uncomfortable with the anger she was seeing in her queen's eyes. Rias, Naruto is like wild stallion. He runs free whether you want him to or not. You aren't going to tame him. The best you can do is befriend him. He'll answer your call, even carry you on his back if you need him to, but he won't be your pet. He won't let you chain him. Yuto knows this. I know this. Hell, even Kaneko knows this. It seems you alone don't seem to understand this. Not that I'm too surprised. You haven't made much of an attempt to get to know him, Akeno explained seriously. I've made plenty of attempts to get to know Naruto-kun. I taught him magic, Rias claimed indignantly. True, but did you talk to him about anything else other than magic during those lessons? Akeno asked with a raised eyebrow. Seeing the answer in Rias' face, Akeno shook her head before telling her, let's face it, Rias. You took the time to learn about Naruto's combat abilities and basic history, but then you shoved him to the side. You saw that he was a competent fighter and that he quickly adapted to being a devil, so you decided you could turn your attention elsewhere. You've spent more time this month studying strategies for raiding games than you have talking to Naruto-kun. That isn't true, Rias claimed, although it was easy to see the uncertainty in her eyes. Akeno just asked with a raised eyebrow, then how do you explain your obliviousness to his personality? Yuto and Naruto-kun have basically become best friends in this month. I've been desperately trying to get closer to him. Even Kaneko is always watching him and analyzing his words, even if she doesn't show it. What effort have you put into figuring Naruto-kun out, Rias? Whether you want to accept it or not, Rias, you've put no effort in. You and Naruto do get along. That is plain to see, but that is all. He likes you. I'm not so sure he respects you as a king. He doesn't refer you to as Bucko, but Rias-chan. He may have not meant it as an insult, but it is a sign. A sign that he in no way considered you his superior. You haven't put in an effort to make him think of you as a friend, and he doesn't view you as his leader. Now that caused Rias to protest by declaring, I am friends with Naruto-kun. You certainly didn't behave like his friend just now, Akeno immediately claimed before elaborating, you were more concerned with punishing him for disobeying you than finding out why he disobeyed you. You didn't try to understand his feelings. You didn't ask him how he knew the nun. Hell, you didn't even ask him how he was feeling. I did too ask him, Rias claimed before blinking as she thought back. She then asked uncertainly, didn't I? No, you didn't, Akeno told her bluntly. I didn't realize I was behaving like that, Rias finally admitted, clearly being vulnerable at the realization of what she had been doing. She then continued weakly, Naruto-kun just adapted so easy I figured having him be a member of my peerage would be easy. That I didn't need to worry about him. So I just got caught up in my own worries. Riser, the upcoming match, all that. And then this nun. I just never expecting him to act out like this. It just caught me by surprise, and I reacted without thought. Akeno sighed as she tried to make all her anger drain away. She really shouldn't have said all that stuff. She knew Rias was stressed enough without her adding onto it. She was just mad and annoyed by how Rias had been treating Naruto like a side concern. It wasn't as bad as she had made it seem, and Rias hadn't been doing it with any malicious intent. She had simply been distracted. Hopefully she'll change. For now she has to make sure this situation doesn't end badly. She then put a comforting hand on Rias' shoulder before telling her, "I'm sure Naruto-kun barely even noticed. He certainly won't hold it against you. Even I know that," Rias commented with a small smirk. She then asked, "So what is it you recommend I do in this situation, Akeno?" Akeno thought for a moment before announcing calmly, "Rias, you've been spoiled by myself, Kaneko, and Yuto. We all listened to you without much protest. It isn't your fault. This is just the first time you've had to deal with a servant who is disobeying you. So you now need to make a decision, Rias. Do you want a servant, or a friend? Is that even a question, Akeno? You know the answer to that," Rias stated in disbelief. "Do I? I know which choice I hope you choose, but you still have to make it. If only to yourself. You haven't been behaving like the answer should be clear. You've been thinking of Naruto as a servant, and haven't tried to be his friend," Akeno informed her seriously before continuing. "You are a member of the Gremory clan, a family that has such extraordinary affection among devils that they are said to not differentiate between servants and themselves. It's time to prove it. Accept Naruto as he is, faults and all. Think of him as a friend, and not a servant. If you do that, the answer of what we should do is pretty clear." Rias took her words in seriously. Being a friend is accepting the faults of your friends, and still staying beside them. Even when they do something dangerous and reckless. Looking up at the other members of her peerage, she examined them. Yuto looked like he was barely stopping himself from sprinting out the door. Of course he wanted to go help Naruto. Kaneko was actually slipping on a pair of combat gloves. For all her aloof behavior, Kaneko was the type to help her comrades when they needed. Akeno would look calm and composed to most people, but Rias had known her for years. The two were best friends. So it was easy for Rias to tell Akeno was in the same state as Yuto, barely containing herself. What they wanted to do was abundantly clear. With a small smile, Rias stood up. She then announced, "Looks like we need to go help out friend, even if he is being reckless and dangerous." Naruto teleported onto the street right before the church he had directed Asia to before. That meant it was the base of the fallen angels, where they were now holding Asia. The sky was dark. The sun had been setting when he had left the clubroom, and he had briefly headed home. He'd changed into his workout clothes and devoured some food in record time. His workout clothes were better suited for combat than the academy uniform. The food was just common sense. He hadn't eaten for near a full day, and he had been hungry. This was going to be difficult enough without his stomach aching from hunger. Now he was all ready and looking at the large gate of the fence around the church. He couldn't hold anything back. He was going all out right from the beginning. Naruto had already made the mistake of underestimating his opponents yesterday. He was still berating himself for what happened the previous day. He'd made mistake after mistake. Not even honest mistakes either. Stupid, amateur ones. The sort of things he would have made as a genin. Okay, he's still a genin, but he means before he had gone on the training trip with Jiraiya. He hadn't taken Freed seriously enough, allowing the exorcist to survive till the fallen angels had come. He tried to hide in an obvious space like the park, allowing Donaseek to find him. He'd prioritized getting information out of Donaseek over finishing him and getting Asia to safety. Most of all, Naruto had gotten when it became clear he outclassed Donaseek. That had allowed the fallen angel to target Asia, and near fatally injure Naruto. One thing after another. Naruto had clearly lost his edge since coming to this world because he was sure the Naruto that defeated Pain or fought Madara wouldn't have done such a poor job of protecting Asia, decreased power or not. He would have pulled out all the stops to rescue his friend. He would have fought and struggled till he succeeded. Instead Naruto had botched it. Not again though. He was going to pull out all the stops this time. He would rescue Asia or he would die trying. His mind firm and unwavering, Naruto started walking forward. Once he was right in front of the gate, he raised his leg. A power-packed kick sent the large gates flying. The metal crashed onto the ground, making a ruckus in the process. Just what he wanted. Naruto only got 10 steps in before 3 blurs came out of the church entrance. Naruto stopped and watched seriously as the 3 blurs alighted on the ground a short distance from him. He wasn't surprised to see they were fallen angels. All 3 of them were females. The one on the right was a petite blonde hair done up in short pigtails and blue eyes. She seemed to be wearing a gothic Lolita dress. A black dress with lots of white frills. The one on the left was a more mature woman. She had navy blue hair which fell over her right eye. She was tall and rather buxom, facts that were highlighted by her cleavage displaying shirt and a miniskirt. The one in the center seemed to be the leader, having the strongest magic signature of the three. She was a brunette with violet eyes. Her generously curved figure was covered by what can only be described as leather straps. A single strap wrapped around her S, covering her S. Just under her S was a thicker strap which seemed to serve no purpose really. What appeared to be a skimpy bikini bottom or leather thong covered her crotch. Otherwise she had shoulder pads, leather gloves that went to her upper arm, and leather thigh-high boots. It was kind of ridiculous that the gloves and boots covered more skin than her top and bottoms. The apparent leader looked at him with a tilted head, a smirk on her face. She then commented in amusement, "So you lived. Actually rather impressive. We thought for sure you were a goner. Clearly you suffered some brain damage though, since you came here like this." Naruto didn't answer in favor of just looking at her seriously. Ordinarily he would have fired back by commenting on how she was wearing belts as clothing, but he was not interested in bantering. She didn't seem bothered by his silence though, and just lifted her hands in a "what can you do" gesture before continuing, "You even got here before we could finish preparing the ceremony. It is taking a bit longer without Donaseek, but we'll manage. We'll just use this opportunity to play with you a bit. You did kill Donaseek after all. The man was a pain, but that doesn't mean we'll let you off." Kala Warner. Middled. The two others quickly jumped into the air. Naruto tensed in preparation, but they didn't attack him. The two just hovered as magic circles formed in front of them. After they finished whatever it was that they were doing, a purple dome formed above the church. A barrier. The two quickly dropped back down. The little blonde then told Naruto mockingly, "And now no help will be coming for you. We've got you all to ourselves." The older one then added, "3 women all to yourself. Isn't this a man's dream? The reality doesn't quite match the fantasy, but I heard it is better to be optimistic when about to die." When Naruto still didn't respond, the leader tilted her head and questioned in a teasing voice, "What's wrong? Cat got your tongue? Too scared to say anything? Come on, this isn't as fun for us if you don't play along. I'm only going to give you one warning," Naruto finally announced. Making sure to look each of them in the eyes, he took a deep breath before declaring seriously, "Let Asia go. If you do that, I shall leave without a fight. If you insist upon keeping her though, I cannot guarantee you won't be the same after tonight." The three blinked at him in shock before they burst out laughing in unison. The leader held a hand to her face as she giggled. She then removed it to show a wide smile as she retorted happily, "That's good. I needed a good laugh. Keep saying things like that, and I'll be tempted to keep you." "I warned you," Naruto replied solemnly. "Yes, you did. Now let's see if you can back up your bark, little boy," the leader said, clearly not intimidated in the least by Naruto. Not only was she stronger than Donaseek, but she had 2 allies by her side while he was alone. Crossing her arms, she looked at him expectantly with a small smile. Just blatantly showing how unworried she was by his threat. Never say Naruto isn't prepared to back up his words. He may talk loud, but he is always ready to back them up. He'd rather gnaw off his own arm than break a promise. So he just took a deep breath as he held his right arm out to the side. The fallen angels didn't even attempt to stop whatever it was he was planning, their arrogance at play. A golden magic circle immediately formed before Naruto's outstretched hand. Reaching into it, the end of his arm seemed to dissolve. Naruto could still feel it though, and he searched the pocket dimension with his hand. Feeling his hand come into contact with what he was looking for, he grasped it and started pulling his hand back. His arm was drawn back out of the magic circle. When it got to his hand though, it revealed he had something grasped in his hand. Slowly, inch by inch the object was revealed. First the handle and hilt were revealed, intricate blue and gold designs were embedded into it. Several small purple gems were placed along the center. The long blade was then exposed to the air. The blade was golden, the sharpened edges a gleaming silver. Several runes were inscribed at the base of the blade, and the tip had a blue symbol. It was a beautiful sword, almost grandiose. It wasn't just showy either. As soon as the golden magic circle Naruto had pulled it from disappeared, it was like a dam had burst. The immediate area around them was bathed in a holy aura. Enough power that it felt like it was pressing down on everyone in its presence. The fallen angels all reacted in shock and horror as they felt the holy power of the sword. The leader immediately screeched as she took a step back, "Where did you get a true holy sword? And how can a devil wield it?" Holding the sword in front of him in a ready position, Naruto informed them in a blank voice of stating fact, "This is Excalibur Ruler, the holy sword of control. An important friend gifted me with it. As for why I wield it because she entrusted it to me, and I never betray those who place their trust in me. Being a devil won't prevent that. Excalibur Ruler. Crap, stay away from," the leader shrieked as the three prepared to try and flee. Too late. Obey. Naruto interrupted as he invoked Excalibur Ruler's ability to control anything the wielder wishes. The sword immediately shined brightly, the light invading the eyes of everyone who could see it. The fallen angels screamed as they were engulfed. The light remained for a second before it blinked out. Naruto looked to see the three fallen angels standing where they had before. Except they weren't about to flee any longer. The three were just standing there, their eyes blank and glazed over. "I warned you, but now I got to save Asia. I'll deal with you three later," Naruto muttered as he walked past the three hypnotized fallen angels. With the main threats dealt with, Naruto strode into the church with a determined gait. He looked around in annoyance when he saw it was empty. Closing his eyes, Naruto drew upon a minuscule amount of natural energy. He didn't have the reserves to try and enter Sage mode right now, but he could still call upon the sensor capabilities his Sage training had given him. It only took a second for Naruto to locate Asia, especially since she was surrounded by about 60 people Naruto suspected to be stray exorcists. There was a large underground chamber under the church. Naruto quickly strode towards where he sensed the entrance tunnel with single-minded focus. Reaching the wooden altar, Naruto didn't hesitate to smack it with his open left hand. The altar was destroyed, the fragments flying through the air to hit the stone wall. In its place was the hidden tunnel. Naruto headed down quickly. There were quite a lot of steps. It felt like he descended 100 before he finally came out into the large stone chamber. The roof was at least 30 meters tall, and the entire room was probably 50 meters long and wide. Good. This room had clearly been structurally stabilized with magic by the fallen angels. That meant Naruto could go all out without worry about the place collapsing on top of him. His eyes were then drawn to the mass of exorcists. They were all dressed in black robes, with black hoods covering their faces. Only their eyes and mouths were shown. Almost all of them were holding light swords. Naruto's eyes then moved onward to see that the stray exorcists were standing protectively before a large, pyramid-like platform, on top of which rested Asia, right before a large ornate cross. She was dressed in a dirty tan slip instead of her nun attire. She was down on her knees, looking at him in shock. Standing right beside her was Freed. "Oh, looks like the shitty devil got past the fallen angels. How annoying, exciting for me. Now I get to watch you die myself," Freed exclaimed loudly. Naruto ignored the insane priest entirely in favor of locking eyes with Asia. Flashing her a confident smile, he declared, "Don't you worry, Asia-chan. I'll rescue you, no problem. It's a promise. Just wait up there for a few minutes." Asia looked shocked, but eventually broke into a grin. With tears forming in her eyes, she nodded at him. "Hey, shitty devil, don't ignore me," Freed screamed in anger. Naruto brushed off his words in favor of looking at the gathering of priests. He then announced, "I'll do the same thing for you all that I did for the fallen angels. I'll give you one warning. Let Asia go. If you do that, I shall leave without a fight. If you insist on keeping her though, expect me to come at you full strength. I'll hold nothing back." Shitty devil is making threats now. Fuck off with that shit. Those bitches apparently failed to deal with you, but you're probably tired now. We also outnumber you, Freed grumbled in annoyance. Naruto just shrugged at his words. Freed's words were true. Despite getting past the fallen angels without a fight, using Excalibur Ruler was draining. The process by which it controlled others is energy demanding. Thankfully, the energy consumption partly relied upon the wills of the one using it and the one being affected. Those fallen angels weren't schmucks when it came to willpower, but Naruto was widely known for his indomitable will. It was no contest. So it had taken comparatively little energy to control them than if they had the stronger willpower, but it was still a good amount. To get all three of them, Naruto had used a good chunk of his chakra. He didn't have enough left to control all 60 exorcists here. So he had to fight them using more conventional methods, where their numbers could be used against him. He was still confident though. "I warned you," Naruto told them seriously. The exorcists all prepared to charge towards Naruto to swarm him en masse, but Naruto always preferred having the first move. With a jump, Naruto launched himself into the air. Predicting his arc and when he would hit the ground, Naruto started flipping as he came down. Landing right in the middle of the exorcists, Naruto's flip was perfect so that his heel connected with the ground first. The exorcists had all gotten out of the way of the blindingly obvious axe kick, but they had no way of knowing what a reaction the attack would cause. "Satenkyaku," Naruto announced as the ground cracked and exploded around the impact zone of his kick. The stone ground shattered, and large pieces of the ground shot upwards. The exorcists were completely caught off guard. Those closest to Naruto were knocked down either by the ground collapsing under them or from being victims of the flying stones his kick had launched into the air. Those further away had to raise their hands up to prevent the dust and rocks filling the air from getting into their eyes. Which was a perfect opportunity for Naruto to attack. Kicking off the nearest stone piece, Naruto shot towards the nearest cluster of exorcists. Lifting Excalibur ruler, Naruto slashed at the nearest exorcist. The exorcist lifted his light blade to block. Now, Excalibur ruler is not the most destructive sword. Even among the fragments of Excalibur. Despite being hailed as the strongest fragment, it wasn't meant to be a massively overpowered sword. It didn't launch blasts of holy energy or destroy everything it touched. It was instead a more elegant sword, with its main ability being its control capability. However, it still was a true, holy sword. When used with Naruto's rook strength behind it, the cheap, mass-produced light swords of the exorcists didn't stand a chance. They shattered like glass. Excalibur ruler then continued, slicing clean through the closest exorcist's waist to cut into the two behind him as well. Just like that, 3 exorcists down. Naruto turned and jumped towards the next closest group of exorcists, and like that the slaughter began. Naruto did not have Yuto's skill with a blade. He didn't have any skill with a blade. While passable with a kunai, trying to use Excalibur ruler like a kunai was just stupid. So he didn't even try to be elegant or graceful while using Excalibur ruler. He instead embraced waving it around like a club. It worked after all. The exorcists couldn't block his strikes. Their weapons shattered from the force Naruto was putting into his swings. With wide swings he could hit any that were close together. Any that got close to him also fell prey to his wild swings. A number of the exorcists took out guns like Fried had used the previous night, but those failed to change anything either. Naruto completely ignored the ineffective shots. They just bounced off. Instead, he just continued to wade into any nearby groups of exorcists. It helped that none of them proved as good with them as Fried had been. As long as he kept moving, most of the shots missed him. Some hit their own guys. Naruto felt like a butcher, but he didn't back down. He'd warned them. These guys had been willing to harm Asia for her sacred gear. They chose for things to end up this way. Naruto's rhythm was interrupted when he felt Excalibur ruler stop in the rib cage of an exorcist. With a frown, he tried to pull it out. It stayed in there stubbornly though. It was stuck in the guy's bones. Naruto would have just pulled it out with brute force, but several nearby exorcists saw the chance. One tried to slice through Naruto's arm that was grasping Excalibur ruler, forcing Naruto to let go. A simple hook with his now free right hand broke the guy's jaw and sent him flying. Seeing more exorcists trying to attack now that Naruto was weaponless, Naruto decided to revert to good old fisticuffs. Pressing one hand against a nearby boulder from when Naruto had broken the floor, he used chakra to make it stick to his hand. He then chucked it at the group. The results were not pretty for those that were hit. Naruto followed in the wake of the boulder as well, using quick strikes to finish any that had managed to avoid. Taking the exorcists out was more difficult now that he couldn't just randomly wade into the enemy while swinging his sword around. The light swords couldn't damage Naruto too badly, but he wasn't going to risk them managing to slice a muscle, tendon, or important artery. So he made sure to avoid the weapons of the enemy. It involved much more darting around than before. Naruto jumped on any lone exorcist, and chucked boulders at any groups that tried to attack him. Several times he grabbed the arms of those who were swinging at him, and threw them into walls with bone-breaking force. With most of the exorcists already sliced down, it only took Naruto a few minutes to finish off the remnants. Although he didn't come out unscathed, he got a few wounds in the process of cutting the exorcists down. His sleeveless shirt had been turned to scrap by all the light bullets. His right forearm sported a shallow cut. The most annoying was a small cut on his hairline though, which caused a stream of blood to run down one side of his face. He was mostly unharmed though. Any feeling of triumph was cut off when he heard an insane laughter. Naruto turned to see Freed holding Excalibur ruler. His eyes widened in shock. What the? Selene had told him people capable of suing holy swords are extremely rare. It's why he felt confident with leaving it there. Of course Freed happens to be able to use them. That's just Naruto's luck. As soon as he lets Excalibur ruler out of his grasp, someone who can use it is right there. Naruto immediately demanded, "How are you holding Excalibur ruler?" "Haha, it worked. I thought that old fucker was messing with me, but it worked. He actually gave me the ability to wield a true holy sword," Freed declared gleefully. He then looked at Naruto with a menacing smirk as he continued, "Thanks, shitty devil. I always wanted one of these, but I wasn't considered stable enough. Even after that old fucker experimented on me, they told me to wait for the right time, and all that shit. Now I've got the strongest fragment of Excalibur. Not sure where you got this, and I sure as hell don't care. All I know is that I'll put this to good use, and I know of a few people who will really like this development. First I'll kill you, and then I think I'll control that shitty nun you are so infatuated with. She seems like she'll be a good slave. Yep, I'll have a lot of fun with her. Hell, those fallen angel bitches too. Never liked them. The possibilities are endless. Dealing with you is first though. I'm going to really enjoy this, you shitty devil. Now stand still and let me cut you up." The end of his spiel was punctuated by Excalibur ruler lighting up again. Naruto had tried to reach Freed before it could set in, but he just didn't have that sort of speed. He cursed as he felt Excalibur ruler start affecting his mind. The light died down to show Naruto standing with his head down, his hair shadowing his eyes. Seeing that he was helpless, Freed jumped forward. With a gleeful cackle he swung the blade at Naruto. "Don't fuck with me," Naruto screamed as he moved. Slipping under the swing, Naruto grabbed under Freed's shoulder and tossed him over his hip with Freed's momentum. Freed went flying down the length of the chamber, finally landing in a heap. As the insane priest got up while cursing profusely, Naruto pointed at him and declared with a powerful resolve, "Don't act so confident just because you have a fancy sword in your hand. You know nothing about that sword. Excalibur ruler is heavily dependent upon the wills of both the wielder and the victim. I promised Asia I would rescue her. I never break my promises. I shall rescue her, and no one can change that. Not you, not Excalibur ruler, not even God himself. Someone like you can never understand that sort of resolve. You may be able to hold that sword, but you will never be able to use its power to control me," Naruto proclaimed boldly. "Shitty fucking sword. Not doing what it was frickin' built to do," Freed snapped as he got to his feet. Growling at Naruto, he held up the sword as he snarled out, "Fine then. Fight back. I've got a fucking holy sword now, devil. One scratch with this and you are done. So bring it on." "You won't get one scratch," Naruto claimed, unflinching at the thought of battling with a holy sword. "Just die already, you shitty devil," Freed screamed out as he charged at Naruto. Naruto shot forward as well. As the two approached, Naruto held out his armored hand while Freed swung Excalibur ruler. Freed's sneer widened as it became clear Naruto was going to try and catch the sword. That was not going to work against a holy sword, armored gloves are not. Right as it looked inevitable that Naruto would lose a hand, Naruto locked eyes with Freed. The exorcist immediately froze up, stopping all movement. Naruto took advantage of the opportunity. His raised hand caught Freed's wrist, snapping it with a flick of his wrist. Freed's damaged wrist caused him to drop Excalibur ruler. Naruto then stepped forward, lifting up his leg. "You first, shitty priest," Naruto yelled as the bottom of his foot connected with Freed's chest. The front snap kick had enough power to send Freed flying backward till he connected with the wall, a sickening crack sounding out. The priest fell to the ground limply. Temporary paralysis technique for the win. The simple technique allowed one to temporarily restrain an opponent through eye contact. It appeared devils and fallen angels were immune to it. It's a good thing Freed is a human then. It only works for a second if the victim is strong, but Naruto had just proved 1 second is more than enough. Naruto bent down and grabbed Excalibur ruler's handle as he grumbled, taking my sword. If he wants it so bad I'm willing to shove it up his ass. With his holy sword safely back in his possession, Naruto's mind wandered back to just why he had come here. His head snapped up and he yelled out, Asia. Seeing her still on top of the platform, Naruto started running in her direction. Quickly climbing the steps, he soon arrived right in front of her. He immediately crouched down and started looking over her as he questioned in concern, Are you alright? They didn't hurt you, did they? Asia just watched him with wide eyes. After a few seconds though her eyes started watering. Naruto immediately panicked in response, but she threw herself at him before he could ask her anything. Burying her head in his chest and throwing her arms around him, she sobbed out, I was so scared. Our Rainier-sama said she wanted my twilight healing. She was going to take it. Naruto was caught off guard, but eventually managed to recover enough to wrap his arms around the crying nun. He then whispered to her soothingly, There. They can't hurt you now. Why yes, but you know what? Asia replied with her face still buried in his chest, muffling the words slightly. She then looked at Naruto to show that despite her teary eyes, she was beaming. She then declared, I knew Naruto-san would come. I didn't pray to God. I didn't say my prayers. My life didn't flash before my eyes. Because I knew you would come rescue me. That surprised Naruto, but he quickly gave her a wide grin as he exclaimed, Of course. I promised to protect you, and I always keep my promises. Putting her face back against his chest when she felt herself blushing, she nodded her head at his words. She then mumbled into his chest, Meeting you really was a gift from God, Naruto-san. Naruto raised his free hand to scratch the back of his head sheepishly at that. A gift from God, huh? That isn't going to inflate his ego. Looking around at the scattered bodies littering the floor of the chamber, Naruto let out a sigh. Pulling away from Asia, he looked at her before asking softly, Do you think you can do something for me, Asia-chan? Asia looked surprised at the question, but quickly nodded her head and answered, Of course, Naruto-san. Whatever you want, I'll do it. Do you think you can go check on the exorcists? Heal any of them? Naruto asked awkwardly. Seeing Asia's surprised look, he scratched his head before explaining awkwardly, I know I gave them a choice. I know they were standing between me and you. I know some of them probably deserved to die, but I've never been comfortable with killing. I'll probably regret it, but I prefer to save any that can be. Asia just stared at him with wide eyes, but then nodded with a wide smile and answered, Okay. I'll heal any that I can. Thanks, Asia-chan. I know I'm being kind of selfish here. They were just holding you after all. This is probably hard for you, Naruto said to her regretfully. No, it's fine, Asia quickly claimed before looking at him in admiration while adding, It's nice that you care. Even if you just were fighting them, you value their lives. You care about even your enemies. That isn't something you should ever have to apologize for, Naruto-san. That is a trait that just proves how beautiful a soul you have. And that caused Naruto to blush. He looked away, not quite sure how to respond. Asia seemed to realize what she said. She squeaked and looked at the ground, her face flushed. After a few moments of this, Asia started scurrying down the steps to start looking for any of the injured that could be saved. Naruto quickly added, except Freed. That maniac just needed to die. Asia nodded and started looking over all the bodies. It quickly became clear that the vast majority of them were already dead. Naruto had kept his word about not holding back. Some of the exorcists had been entirely bisected at their waists, some were decapitated, and let's not forget those Naruto chucked boulders at. A human doesn't take a boulder to the face without things getting messy. Asia managed to find a few that had gone into shock from losing a limb to Naruto. Those she managed to patch up. They'd still lose the limb, but they'd live. Most of the ones she managed to save were those that had received friendly fire from their buddies with the light guns. In the end, Asia had only managed to work on just short a dozen exorcists, 1 or 2 likely to still pass away. Maybe 10 survivors of a group of 60. Naruto was actually impressed by Asia. It was a messy scene, what with bisected bodies and crushed skulls. Yet she didn't flinch or shy away. She just got a firm look on her face and continued working. Okay, I think that's it. I've done what I can for those I could help, Asia finally announced as she stopped healing one exorcist who had received 3 light bullets to the stomach. Alright, good job, Asia-chan, Naruto said from where he had been sitting. While she had been working, he'd been taking a breather. He still had a bit of chakra, but he had just tanked 60 exorcists. That is rather intense, and he needed a bit of a rest. Thanks, but I wish I could have helped more of them, Asia claimed while looking at the ground sadly. Look at me, Asia-chan, Naruto ordered her as he stood up and approached her. She hesitantly followed the order. Looking her in the eyes, Naruto laid his hands on her shoulders as he told her firmly, if it wasn't for you, those 10 wouldn't stand a chance. I'm the one that killed the others. That's on me. You just saved 10 lives. That's a magnificent job. No one could expect more. Thank you, Naruto-san, Asia whispered shyly, blushing and averting her eyes. She then opened her mouth to speak, but suddenly lost her balance. Whoa, Naruto exclaimed as he caught the falling nun. He then asked in concern, are you okay, Asia-chan? Why yes, Naruto-san. I'm just feeling a bit lightheaded, Asia claimed sheepishly. Naruto frowned as he mentally berated himself. Of course she would be tired. Who knows when the fallen angels had last allowed her to eat? Not to mention the emotional stress from being held prisoner, and then rescued. Finally healing life-threatening injuries of 10 people. She was just reaching the end of her rope mentally. She needed time for rest and relaxation. To absorb all that had happened. What Naruto did next was only natural. Hooking an arm under her legs, while making sure to keep the sword he had in the hand from cutting her, he lifted her up into a bridal carry while saying, up you go. Asia blushed profusely at the action and immediately stuttered out, what are you doing, Naruto-san? Isn't it obvious? You're clearly tired, so I'm going to carry you out of here, Naruto replied nonchalantly. That is unnecessary. I am fine, Asia claimed with her embarrassment clear. Nonsense. You've been through enough, and I asked you to use your powers. Carrying you out of here is the least I can do. Now stop talking and look pretty while I get us out of here before these exorcists wake up, Naruto told her with a wide grin. Asia blushed again, but seemed to follow the order. Before Naruto could start walking though, the two heard a grinding noise. Naruto turned to see Fried limping into a dark tunnel that definitely hadn't been there a few minutes ago. They then watched as it closed behind him. Naruto just stood gaping. What the hell? Fried was alive. He took a full-on kick from Naruto. Naruto had thought he'd caved in his ribcage. Not to mention the stray priest had smacked into a stone wall with sickening force. The fact that he was not only alive, but walking was just astonishing. Fried may be a fucking maniac, but he's a durable fucking maniac. Naruto considered trying to chase him down. He could probably break through that hidden tunnel and catch Fried before he got too far. He was clearly injured considering how he was walking. When he looked at Asia though, he scrapped the idea. Asia was tired and vulnerable. He wasn't going to leave her alone to go chasing after Fried. He couldn't allow himself to get sidetracked. He'd done that enough yesterday. He'd completed what he set out to do. Saving Asia. He'd have to be satisfied with that. Naruto just knew letting Fried go was going to come back to bite him in the ass down the road though. Turning away from where Fried had escaped, Naruto started moving towards the way back out of this chamber. Walking up the stairs, they soon entered the regular church. He didn't get close to the door though before it was kicked open from the outside. Naruto looked in shock as 2 figures ran inside before coming to a stop after seeing him. Yuto? Kaneko-chan? Naruto questioned in surprise at seeing the 2 devils. Naruto, Yuto exclaimed in equal surprise. He then saw Asia in his arms and commented in surprise, you finished already. Senpai works fast, impressive, Kaneko remarked with the slightest bit of surprise in her voice. What are you 2 doing here? Rias-chan is going to be mad at you, Naruto asked in concern. He might have been willing to become a stray to save Asia, but he didn't want to drag these 2 down with him. Yuto just shot him a smile before stating, no she isn't. She came too, after all. What? Look, Yuto told him in amusement, stepping aside. Naruto tilted his head, but walked out of the church. He immediately saw what Yuto meant. Rias and Akeno were both looking at the 3 hypnotized fallen angels, perplexed. Rias snapped her fingers in front of their faces before asking in blatant confusion, "What sort of illusion is this? I've never seen anything like this." "Rias-chan," Naruto called out. She looked at him, so he quickly moved closer to her before he questioned, "What are you doing here, Rias-chan?" "Well, we were planning to assist you," Rias claimed before continuing while looking at Asia. Unfortunately, that pesky barrier was rather stubborn. It took a few minutes for Akano and I to break it down. It seems our help was unnecessary though. You seem to have managed on your own. "Yeah," Naruto replied. He then quickly added, "I appreciate the thought regardless." "I hope so," Rias stated with a shrug. She nodded towards the unresponsive fallen angels and commented, "I had to ask about this though. I've never seen anything like it before." "Oh that? Yeah, that's this sword at work," Naruto informed, waving it a bit while still holding Asia. "That sword?" Rias mumbled, confused by the answer. A gasp quickly drew her attention though. She turned to see Yuto looking at the sword with wide eyes. His hands then clenched as he proclaimed, "I knew I sensed a holy sword, but never thought this. The power to control other living beings, that is Excalibur ruler." "Wait, what? Excalibur ruler?" Rias exclaimed in astonishment. She then looked at the sword in Naruto's hand with wide eyes. Excalibur ruler. The strongest fragment of the holy sword Excalibur, the weapon wielded by King Arthur himself. The fragment that disappeared soon after it was constructed and has remained missing for centuries. And Naruto, a devil, was wielding it. Naruto ignored the disbelieving stares in favor of announcing, "Yep. Selene gave it to me." "The Lady of the Lake?" Akano repeated in confusion. "Yep. Apparently the blessing she gave King Arthur ended up saving his life at some point. He then swore her a debt of gratitude. Unfortunately, he died before he could fulfill it. So the burden fell on his family. For several centuries they couldn't fulfill it, and they considered it a blight on their ancestors' memory. When the original Excalibur broke, they managed to gain possession of Excalibur ruler. They then gave it to her as payment for that old debt," Naruto explained. "And she just gave it to you?" Akano questioned skeptically. Naruto shrugged before clarifying without much care, "Excalibur ruler might be a valuable tool for us, but it was practically useless to her. She claims to have only accepted it in the first place because she wanted the Pendragon family to move on. She'd never particularly cared about the debt in the first place. She gave King Arthur the blessing to help him, and viewed the debt as unnecessary. With no use for it though, it was just gathering dust. When she sent me off to go to Kuo, she gave it to me. She said she just wanted it gone, and was looking to pass it on at the first opportunity." That caused the listeners to sweat drop. That makes a disturbing amount of sense. For a true holy sword to be treated as a useless burden is a disturbing thought regardless. The Lady of the Lake is a god, so she had powers that far surpass a fragment of Excalibur, but still. Seeing them all speechless, Naruto continued, "I really couldn't afford to hold back. Fighting these three would have been far too draining, even if I did win. I don't really like the idea of using this sword, but it was the best option." Naruto really wasn't fond of Excalibur ruler's ability. Control over all things the user wishes. The ability to subjugate the will of a person or even an object. It was like Kotoa Matsukami all over again. If it wasn't for the fact that Excalibur ruler can be resisted if the person has a strong enough will, as Naruto proved with Freed, he'd probably refuse to use it entirely. Even now he had resolved to only use that ability sparingly. "Then let me destroy it," Yuto burst out. Naruto's head snapped around to look at him in shock. Naruto hadn't ever heard such anger in Yuto's voice before. Yuto was always kind and polite to a fault. Yet his face was currently twisted with hatred as he glared at Excalibur ruler, almost as if he was attempting to melt it into molten slag with his gaze. Feeling entirely uncomfortable with the hatred in the normally kind Bishonen, Naruto shifted the sword to an angle where Yuto couldn't see it. Yuto's eyes quickly flicked to Naruto's, his anger at the move apparent. That only made Naruto more uneasy. Yuto, who he considered his best friend at this point, was glaring at him. Steeling himself, Naruto asked evenly, "Why do you want to destroy it? Does it matter?" Yuto demanded shortly. "Yes," Naruto replied honestly before adding, "Selene gave this to me. Not only was it a gift, but she told me to treasure it. To treat it as a companion. That it would be important in the future. I may not like its ability, but I owe Selene my life." I also trust her with my life. If she says it will be important, then I believe her. So you better have a damn good reason if you expect me to destroy this sword." Yuto looked incensed by his words. Naruto actually saw his hand twitch towards his sword. He then spun around and threw his hands into the air as he let out a curse. Yuto never cursed. Yeah, something is definitely wrong. Thoroughly worried by Yuto's behavior, Naruto watched him go carefully. His thoughts were ended though when he felt a small poke on his chest. Looking down, he saw Asia poking her index fingers together. She then asked timidly, "Naruto-san, can you put me down now?" Realizing he had been holding Asia through the entire explanation, Naruto chuckled awkwardly. Carefully placing the nun on her feet, he watched carefully to make sure she was okay. When she showed she could stand steadily, he nodded happily. Rias just watched all this silently before nodding towards the fallen angels again and questioning, "So you used Excalibur ruler to subdue them? Why haven't you killed them?" Naruto scratched his cheek as he claimed thoughtfully, "I knew that what I was doing could threaten to destabilize the current situation between the three factions. I don't want to cause a war, so I decided to spare these three. I figured the Grigori would care more about them than the stray exorcists inside. I pacified them with the order of, stay here and don't do anything. Once I saved Asia, I was going to order them to return to the Grigori. I'd have my hold on them release once they got there. I had hoped by avoiding killing any more fallen angels that this incident would be passed off as an isolated incident not worth raising a fuss about. That is, actually rather sensible," Rias admitted with some slight surprise. When Naruto had gone storming off, vowing to rescue Asia, she'd assume he wouldn't make any plans or contingencies. Clearly she'd underestimated him. This would hurt the pride of the fallen angels, but the loss of any more fallen angels would make the leaders pass it off as inconsequential beyond that. Seems unnecessary now though. It appears that this group has gone rogue. They went against orders by planning to take Asia's sacred gear. The Grigori probably aren't happy with them right now, Naruto informed the group. "How do you know that?" Akano asked with a confused tilt of her head. Donasek implied it last night. "I can also gain an understanding of the victims when I use Excalibur ruler. I can read their minds, you can say," Naruto claimed. "That's kind of scary," Rias admitted as she considered that. "You can read minds with magic, but it is a very weak magic. Anyone with a strong mind is immediately immune. You can also only read the person's surface thoughts even if it does work." "I know. It's another reason I'm reluctant to use this sword for anything other than dire situations," Naruto commented as he looked at the fallen angels. His eyes narrowed as a thought started going through his mind. He finally asked, "Rias, do you mind helping me with something?" Rias blinked in surprise before replying, "Matters, what is it?" "I want you to lend me energy like you do when you are healing me," Naruto told her bluntly. Gesturing towards the fallen angels, he elaborated, "I was just going to send them away, but I got a better idea. Excalibur ruler is capable of completely overriding the will of a victim. The process either takes a long time or a lot of energy. We don't have the time, and I don't have the energy. If you loan me energy though, I can probably manage it." Rias blinked in surprise before exclaiming in surprise, "You want to brainwash them?" "No, that really came out wrong," Naruto spat out in shock, scandalized at the very idea. He massaged the bridge of his nose as he grumbled to himself before starting carefully, "That came out wrong. I wouldn't be brainwashing them. I would leave their core personality the same. I would simply be removing the corruption, if you get what that means. I think I speak for all of us when I say no, we do not get what you mean," Akano stated frankly. Okay. It appears that the very essence of angels revolve around their moral choices. It appears to be why angels suffer physical changes if they indulge in one of the 7 deadly sins, becoming fallen angels. It doesn't just stop there though. The longer they are exposed to these changes, the more it affects them. Not just physically either, but mentally and emotionally. It can be resisted if one's will is strong enough, but if not, their psyches will be slowly corrupted by those feelings. Like a disease or cancer. It then alters everything about them without truly changing them, Naruto awkwardly explained. Seeing the blank looks he was receiving, he sighed and gestured at the fallen angels as he continued, "Let's use these 3 as examples. Middle here became a fallen angel by succumbing to wrath. She lost friends to devils, and became a fallen angel due to her desire to get revenge. Kala Warner fell in love with a human. Angels can have, but both participants had to go through long rituals to purify themselves. Neither participant can have possessive thoughts either, it has to be done through pure love. Naturally, most humans can never fulfill that second requirement. She decided to be with him regardless. So she fell, due to her lust and greed for a relationship with that person. But then her lover died several decades later and she was left a fallen angel. She feels like she did nothing wrong, just falling in love with a human. Rainier succumbed to pride and greed. She not only has a strong pride, but also feels a strong desire to prove herself. So she desires power. She fell when she turned to more unscrupulous methods of gaining power. I won't be changing who they are. Middle will still feel wrath towards devils. Kala Warner will still feel bitter towards God for punishing her for falling in love with a human. Rainier will still desire power. That is part of their base personality, which I will be leaving alone. I'll simply use Excalibur Ruler to remove the corruption that has formed in their psyches from centuries of having those feelings fester, Naruto explained to them. So you'll almost be turning back the clock in their minds? Akano questioned with a tilt of her head. Yes, Naruto claimed immediately, pointing at her happily. He then continued, I shall remove all the damage their minds have accumulated over the centuries of them being fallen angels. Return them to a mental state most similar to when they first fell. They won't be allies per se, but they'll definitely be much more reasonable and rational. I see, Rias mumbled as she considered what Naruto was saying. She couldn't quite understand what he meant, but Naruto was a good guy. If he wanted to do this, then it was probably beneficial to the fallen angels. Finally she nodded and asked, okay. What do I have to do? Just supply me with energy. I'll be able to speed up the process if I don't worry about energy consumption, but it will still take 10 minutes or so, Naruto informed her. When she nodded, he turned towards the fallen angels. Lifting Excalibur Ruler, he closed his eyes and focused. The holy sword lit up with light again, but this time didn't die down. All those watching looked at the spectacle in interest. Rias was given a front row seat as she had to keep her hand in contact with Naruto's shoulder. Akano and Asia both stayed close. Kaneko was a bit further away. Yuto had gone the farthest, leaning against a tree just barely in sight. The process stretched into minutes. All those watching noticed as Naruto seemed to wilt as it continued. His shoulders slumped, he started breathing heavier, dark bags started forming under his eyes, and his face grew stiff. It was like every minute took 2 or 3 hours out of him. It stopped near the 15-minute mark. The light from the holy sword died down. Naruto slumped and stumbled, but Rias quickly caught him. Putting his arm around her shoulders, she allowed him to lean on her. She then turned them towards the fallen angels, who had all fallen to their knees. Ga, what did you do to us? Kala Warner demanded as she held her head in her hands. Oh good lord, I feel all loopy, Middle muttered to herself. Despite being completely beat, Naruto told them, I did warn you three that you might not be the same after tonight. So congratulations, you just had yours truly poking around in your minds. What? The three all demanded in unison. Sighing at having to explain, he told them brusquely, I didn't do anything sinister. You are still you. I didn't make you slaves or anything. No sudden urges or changes. If anything, you'll probably feel more clear-headed than you have in years. It feels like a fog has been lifted from my thoughts, Rainier admitted in surprise. Nodding, Naruto replied, exactly. I used Excalibur Ruler to purge the corruption from your minds. You are still yourselves, but I hope more rational and considerate versions of yourselves. The three didn't quite know how to respond. What do you say to someone who just went through your minds? Seeing they weren't going to say anything, Naruto told them since he just wanted to go and rest, I saved Asia, and now you are outnumbered. There are a few exorcists still alive inside. Go fetch them, and then go back to your leaders. Wait, not quite yet, Rias burst out suddenly. She had just had a brilliant, insane idea. Naruto and the fallen angels looked at her in surprise. Straightening and putting on a noble bearing, she told the three sternly, we know you three disobeyed your orders from the Grigori. Not only that, but you started acting within my territory. Your exorcist killed one of our clients, and attacked one of my servants. Your fate lies within my hands. What do you want? Rainier cautiously asked. Pointing at the three, Rias announced calmly, I shall let 2 of you go, but one of you must stay here and become my servant. To become a devil in my peerage. As the fallen angels recoiled in horror, Ria's own peerage showed varying states of surprise. Their expressions then changed to show what they were thinking of it. Naruto and Kaneko both looked neutral about it, but Yuto didn't look happy. Surprisingly, neither did Akano. Rias didn't allow her expression to change though. She kept her calm and collected look, despite the fact that she was flying by the seat of her pants here. She had not planned this out ahead of time. It had just come to her. This was an amazing opportunity. She now had 3 fallen angels at her mercy. If Rias is the type of king that waits for opportunities to fall into her lap, then she simply has to take advantage of this. The fallen angels didn't seem too pleased by the idea though, and Middle quickly snapped, "Hell no." Rias just shrugged before informing them nonchalantly, "Too bad. You 3 are under my control. If I don't willingly let you go, then my responsibility is to send you to the underworld as hostages. You'd then have to wait until the Grigori negotiated for your release. Considering none of you have multiple sets of wings though, the chance of that ever happening is low. You are even traitors as well. They might be willing to take you back, but give reparations to get you back. Not good odds." The fallen angels were looking more and more uneasy as she continued. Rias quickly glared at Naruto when he opened his mouth, making it clear he wasn't to speak. Luckily Naruto closed his mouth since she looked scary right then. Turning back to the fallen angels, she finished, "So you have 2 options. One of you becomes a devil by joining my peerage, and the other 2 get to go free. Or you 3 can become political hostages for the rest of your life. You can choose." The fallen angels now looked at each other wearily. It was clear which option they preferred, but clearly none of them wanted to be the sacrifice. Middle finally declared loudly, "I am not becoming a devil. No way. Well, I'm not going to become the servant of a little girl either," Calawarner claimed stubbornly. Calawarner and Middle met eyes, and a message seemed to pass between them. The 2 then turned in unison to look at Rainier. The brunette blinked before exclaiming defiantly, "What? No. Why me? This whole thing was your idea, Rainier-sama. We just followed your lead," Middle pointed out with a smirk. "Plus, as the leader you would be receiving the worst punishment when we return," Calawarner added quickly. That's," Rainier stuttered out, incapable of getting more out before she gained a thoughtful look. After several seconds of thought she shrugged and said, "All right. That's it?" Rias asked, hiding her surprise. She had expected more protests and arguments. "Well, yeah," Rainier admitted with a shrug. She then explained, "I'm certainly not happy at the idea of becoming a devil. Or at becoming your servant, but I am the one who concocted this plan. Which means I'd be given the harshest punishment. So becoming a devil under my control is simply preferable to serving your punishment," Rias deadpanned blankly. Seeing Rainier shrug at her words, she sighed. She'll take what she can get though. So she informed the group, "All right. Rainier-san has to stay, but you 2 can leave." The 2 nodded and quickly went into the church. Probably to wait for them to leave and gather any stuff they had there. Not to mention gather up what exorcists remained. Rias then turned to Asia. Frowning slightly, she looked between the nun and Naruto repeatedly before informing the blonde girl, "You come with us as well. We have a lot to discuss." Asia looked nervous at finally being addressed. She had felt awkward ever since Naruto had put her down, almost to the point she wished she was still in her arms. She didn't want to be in his arms again for any other reason. Nope, being around all these unknown people who appeared to be devils is just intimidating. She just needed her safety blanket in Naruto. She looked scared to reply to Rias' order, but Naruto quickly sidled over to her side. Feeling comforted by his presence, she managed to give a firm nod towards Rias and reply, "All right. Then everyone get close. We'll be leaving in one group. I want this entire situation figured out before any of us split up," Rias announced, waving everyone closer to her. Everyone moved closer to her, some more reluctantly. Yuto and Akano both made sure to stay as far from Rainier as possible, and the fallen angel just looked impassive, annoyed by the entire situation. Asia moved right to Naruto's side. A thought popped into Naruto's head though, and he questioned Rias curiously, "I thought your summoning circles could only transport members of your household? How are you going to jump Asia-chan and Rainier-san? I'm going to use a more advanced circle. One neither you or Akano and do. It takes a few minutes to prepare, which is why I couldn't use it last night. Now just stay still as I form it," Rias explained before closing her eyes. As she concentrated on performing the more complex teleportation spell, Naruto's eyes drifted up into the sky. Someone had been watching them. Naruto wasn't sure if he had been there when he arrived, but he had sensed him when he had left the church with Asia. Whoever it was had been hiding under an extremely powerful cloaking spell. Powerful enough for neither Rias or Akeno to notice his presence. Naruto only sensed him because his negative emotions sensing ability allowed him to notice the mass amounts of negative emotions the man had been directing at Naruto. Clearly Naruto had pissed him off by rescuing Asia, although Naruto doesn't know why. Naruto couldn't pinpoint his location though. He figured he'd have to go full on Sage mode to have located his precise position, which was still outside his current abilities. Instead Naruto had behaved normally, like he didn't notice. He then tried to take control of the person with Excalibur ruler when he had used it on the fallen angels. Unfortunately Naruto's inability to see or locate the person had hampered the process, allowing the man to seemingly notice and teleport away before the control settled in. The situation seems resolved, but Naruto would still tell Rias. Someone hadn't wanted Naruto to rescue Asia and was pissed about it. She probably wouldn't be able to make much more of it than him, but she should still know. The group was now in the clubroom. Rainier was laying in the middle of a red magic circle, with Rias standing above her. Naruto and Asia were sitting together on one of the couches. Kaneko was on the other one. The three of them were watching the proceedings with neutral expressions. Both Akeno and Yuto were leaning against the farthest wall, neither looking happy at what was happening. I command thee, Rainier, on my name of Rias Gremory, become my servant. Return to this land as a devil. You shall lead a new life with great joy as my pawn. With that the pawn piece sunk into Rainier's chest, who had been lying on the floor. The red magic circle around her glowed before dying down. Rainier took a deep breath before slowly getting to her feet. She then looked at her hands and clenched them. I don't really feel any different, Rainier announced impassively. Well, I've never heard of a situation where a fallen angel has been reincarnated as a devil. Technically it should work, but there are bound to be a few differences. Unlike a human, you shouldn't receive any large physical enhancements from the process, Rias admitted carefully. Akeno shifted awkwardly at the first statement, but it went unnoticed in the room. So I haven't received any benefits, but I've now got all the weaknesses of a devil. How great, Rainier stated sarcastically, with a pronounced frown. Her words caused Rias to frown as well. Despite her apparent acceptance of the situation, it was clear Rainier wasn't happy with all that had occurred. She simply knew it was better than the alternative, being punished by the Grigori. Trying to be somewhat understanding towards her newest servant, but also needing to keep a big secret of one of her peerage members, Rias replied warily, we aren't sure. As I said, I at least don't know of another situation like this. You have gained the ability to use demonic power surely, and there might be other benefits from mixing fallen angel abilities with devil abilities. You might even end up not having any of the typical weaknesses of a devil, or possibly to a lessened amount. On the other hand though, you could receive no benefits and all the weaknesses. We are mixing two different types of beings. It could be amazing or catastrophic. Great, so I'm an experiment, Rainier muttered in discontent. Think of it as taking a gamble, Rias said optimistically. A gamble where I'm an experiment, Rainier still grumbled. Looking over her shoulder, she extended her wings curiously. They sprouted out of her shoulders. The right wing was the usual dark fallen angel wing, but her left was now a bat wing. The two different wings created an awkward dissymmetry that made her groan. She would have even preferred two devil wings. At least they'd match then. This was just unbalanced. Rias was interested though and commented, interesting. You still have clear signs of being a fallen angel. I'd say it is more appropriate to refer to you as a fallen angel, devil hybrid than a pure reincarnated devil. That did actually make Rainier feel a little better. She had never been the most prideful about fallen angels like some she had met, but it was a bit relieving to know she hadn't completely changed species. She didn't quite express that relief though and just muttered calmly, I guess it's something. I'll do a bit of research into your situation. I doubt this is the first time this has occurred. It's just a matter of if they recorded any information, and if they did, finding it. For now we'll proceed as if we're on our own, Rias announced, her eyes flickering to Akeno briefly. Got it. Good, now we'll move on to the next piece of business, Rias said as she looked away from Rainier towards Asia. She then continued, I need to come to a decision regarding you now, Argento-san. Why yes, Asia replied nervously. She was immediately calmed when Naruto laid a hand on her shoulder. The nun was seated on the couch by Naruto. Rias frowned slightly when she saw just how close the nun had sidled up to her rook. It wasn't even a conscious act on her part, just instinctive. Rias really shouldn't be surprised. Asia is in a room with devils, of course she'd want to be close to the person she is comfortable with. Although it was probably more than that. Naruto had assaulted an enemy fortress alone just to rescue her. He'd saved her life, and literally swept her off her feet and carried her to safety. That's as close to a fairy tale ending that real life can get. What woman wouldn't feel their hearts flutter at the thought of that? Damn, even Rias was jealous. She was proud of her strength, but Naruto had hit the dashing warrior, Prince Ideal on the head with that act. Asia got Naruto, and she gets Riser. Life is so not fair sometimes. Throwing those envious thoughts out of her mind, Rias looked at Asia seriously before telling her, I won't ask how you and Naruto met. You are clearly his friend, and that is enough for this club. I do however need to know just who you are. Why did you come here and why were you working with the fallen angels? Asia looked hesitant, looking at Naruto timidly for some sign of what she should do. He didn't say anything, instead just shooting her a reassuring grin. The message was clear. It was her choice, which seemed to comfort her more than any words could have. Getting a resolute glint in her eyes, she looked at Rias and informed her, I came here after being exiled from the church. Exiled? Why were you exiled? Rias immediately asked. Asia fiddled with the nun attire she had changed to as she explained shyly, I was abandoned in front of a church as a baby. I was raised in the way of the Lord. When I was 8, I found an injured dog. I prayed to God in hopes that he would heal it, and something amazing happened. The dog healed. When the priests and nuns found out what I did, I was sent to a larger church. I was then told to heal the injuries of the Christians that came from all over the world. I was happy that my power could be used to help people. I was called the Holy Priestess. After a few years though, I came upon an injured devil. I healed him. That devil then attacked and killed a father. When everyone found out what I did, I was called a witch. My power, which was previously praised, was now considered heretical since it could be used to heal devils. Naruto interrupted by wrapping his arm around her shoulders. When she looked at him, he exclaimed indignantly, then they're idiots. They decided to change their minds because they didn't like a particular aspect of your ability. Instead of focusing on the good, they only cared about the bad. That's their loss. You are a good girl with an amazing power. They must be blind to not see that. Asia blushed and muttered while poking her index fingers together, Thank you, Naruto-san, but it is because of me that the father died. No, it's because of the devil. He's the one who killed that man, Naruto asserted strongly before continuing her. You are guilty of nothing more than being a healer. You didn't care about that person's species. Only that he was injured. That is the trait of a good healer. You received that twilight healing for a reason, Asia-chan. You were born with the heart of a true healer, and the twilight healing is only a manifestation of that. Asia was clearly happy at his words, but Asia interrupted by Rias saying, I'm sorry for interrupting your moment, but we really need to get back to business. She wasn't too happy about Naruto and Asia having a moment right in front of her. Asia blushed and quickly said, sorry. It's fine. Just please get back to your story, Rias told her brusquely, still not too happy. Right, I was soon cast out of the church. I had nowhere to go. I was lost and without purpose. I was then found by a man. He said that the fallen angels were willing to take me in. I had no other options and accepted. I was given a plane ticket to this town, and told to report to the church, Asia claimed before saying regretfully, I had no idea what they were planning. When I found out Father Fried had killed that man, I was horrified and scared. I had met Naruto-san before, and knew him to be a good person. So I willingly went with him. I see. I'd heard about the Holy Priestess, but I hadn't heard she'd been excommunicated. Makes sense. The church wouldn't want to broadcast an event like that, Rias muttered thoughtfully. She then turned to Rainier and asked, and how did you come into this? Rainier frowned before admitting, I'd long been interested in using the ritual to take a sacred gear. It was well known. A few weeks ago I was given a letter detailing the information that the holder of Twilight Healing would be coming to this town. It said that arrangements had been made to ensure I would be without supervision for a short time. I was to come here and take charge of this situation with whatever allies I could gather. The stray exorcists were already here when I arrived. I was to use the ritual to remove her sacred gear. It then said I would receive twilight healing as a reward. Rias quickly asked, "Who sent you the letter?" Rainier reluctantly admitted at that, "It didn't say. Naruto was the one to pipe in with, and you didn't find that at all suspicious?" Rainier frowned at the intent behind the question and explained in annoyance, "That is what I meant by saying a fog was lifted from my mind earlier. I could finally see that all my decisions for the past century have been foolish. Full of arrogance. The intent behind them fits my goals, but the methods were clearly flawed. I wasn't thinking clearly. Currently I can clearly see I was being set up for something. At the time I simply figured it was a higher-ranked fallen angel who wanted to strengthen our faction by gaining powerful sacred gears. Azazel-sama has forbidden using the ritual, and many fallen angels dislike that. The secrecy was to prevent them from being implicated as well. Truthfully though, I didn't even think about it much. The temptation of gaining twilight healing was enough for me to throw away any suspicions I might have had." Rias stayed silent as she leaned against her desk. Thinking for a few more moments, she declared seriously, "It appears that someone was manipulating all of this. Considering the person Naruto sensed was mad at him, we can assume they were wanting Asia to die having her sacred gear extracted. For what purpose we don't know. It must be a group with considerable influence though to have organized all those stray exorcists and prevented the Grigori from investigating your absence. A group of fallen angels could have done it. The church probably could have orchestrated it as well." "What? The church wouldn't do that," Asia protested immediately. "It makes sense. You were a great asset for them, but having you wander around after having you excommunicated would be a sign of weakness for the faithful. Not to mention the chance of you joining another faction. The motive to have you taken care of is there," Rias justified logically. Asia still looked like she was denying her words though. Rias then shrugged and added, "Although I personally doubt it. I was simply saying it is possible. It's also possible devils orchestrated this. Or humans. Or another group. A group of fallen angels are the most likely suspects. However, if they really wanted twilight healing, they would have sent a stronger force of fallen angels. Not to mention not tried to conduct it deep within devil territory. There's just too little information to make a conclusion. That stinks, but I guess there is little we can do about it," Naruto muttered in an annoyed tone. "I agree with you. For now we need to get back to the main business," Rias claimed. She then moved and sat down behind her desk. Crossing her fingers in front of her face, Rias looked at Asia before announcing seriously, "The matter is clear. As a follower of the church, even if excommunicated, I cannot offer you my protection." "But Rias-chan? Quiet, Naruto," Rias snapped quickly before Naruto could protest even more. Knowing Naruto couldn't restrain himself for long, Rias looked back at the now depressed Asia. She then continued, "However, there is an option available to you." Rias pulled out a bishop piece before explaining, "The bishop's role is to support the rest of the household. Your twilight healing means you are very well qualified for this duty. I cannot offer you my protection when you are simply a follower of the biblical God, even if you are excommunicated. If you join my peerage though, you would be within my jurisdiction and thus under my protection. I am offering you that chance. If I did this, became a devil, I could stay here?" Asia asked uncertainly. Rias quickly nodded and assured her, "Yes. You would be considered a part of my household, and all that entails. You would probably end up going to this school and joining this club as well." Asia only hesitated for a second. Peeking at Naruto out of the corner of her eyes, she gave a determined nod before answering, "Okay. I'll do it. If I can stay here, then I'll become a devil." "Understood. Lay down on the floor and I'll start the process of reincarnating you as my bishop," Rias said as she stood up. As Asia slowly laid on the ground, Rainier commented in an insulted tone, "I'm a pawn, but she gets to be a bishop." Rias sighed and rolled her eyes before clarifying, "It's simply a matter of classifying each of you into the roles you are best suited for. Asia's sacred gear and personality practically guarantee that she'll be relegated to a support role. Thus the bishop fits her. You are not only stronger and have a wider array of skills, but you are also far more experienced. Pawns are meant to be the pieces most likely to make it deep into enemy territory so they can be promoted. You have a good chance of surviving till that point. With the prideful hybrid now satisfied, Rias focused on Asia. Putting the bishop piece on her chest, Rias straightened back up. A red magic circle sprang up as Rias began her chant. I command thee, Ossia Argento, on my name of Rias Gremory, become my servant. Return to this land as a devil. You shall lead a new life with great joy as my bishop. And with that it was done. Asia weakly got to her feet. Naruto immediately moved to help her. He led her back to the couch where she had been sitting before. Rias then gave a weary sigh before announcing, I think that is enough for today. It is late, and a lot has happened today. Naruto, it is only sensible that Rainier-san and Asia-san live with you. Why is that sensible? Rainier asked with a raised eyebrow. Asia also let out a small squeak at the news. Naruto just looked at her before saying blankly, I live alone in a mansion. Rainier just stared, caught off guard. Seeing no lie in his eyes though, she shrugged and commented, at least the housing will be good. As the group started leaving though, Rias called out, Naruto-kun. Can you wait for a minute? I want to talk to you, alone. Naruto looked at her in befuddlement, but finally gave a nod. He turned to Asia and Rainier and Asia and told them, just wait outside. I'll be out in a few. The two then walked out of the door, although Asia was far more reluctant. Once the door closed behind them, Naruto turned towards Rias. Scratching the back of his head awkwardly, he finally took a seat on the couch. She joined him, but neither of the two talked. Naruto finally broke the silence by turning to her and telling her, I still need to thank you for coming to help me, Rias-chan. Thanks. I also appreciate that you helped Asia-chan. I know she doesn't mean much to you, but she's my friend. So it means a lot to me. It's fine. Even I can empathize with her situation. It's nice to be able to help her. Not to mention I got a sacred gear using Bishop out of it. So it isn't entirely selfless, Rias admitted shamelessly. She then grew noticeably nervous as she looked at Naruto, which was weird since Rias is rarely nervous. She finally burst out by saying, I'm sorry. Huh, was Naruto's intelligent reply. Rias took a deep breath and looked Naruto in the eyes before going ahead all at once. I've not been a good king to you, Naruto-kun. I haven't been paying you enough attention. I saw that you were a competent fighter and adapted to being a devil quickly, and decided that was enough. I didn't make an effort to check with your progress or get to know you beyond a bit of banter when we were both in the clubroom. I neglected getting to know you, and instead viewed you as a servant. I'm sorry. I sincerely regret doing such a thing. I've just been distracted and because of that I was treating you badly. Really? I never noticed, Naruto finally commented, scratching his cheek with a puzzled grin on his face. He then shrugged and continued, I mean, yeah. You were distracted, but I bet it was about something really important. I'm not going to hold that against you. Plus, it isn't like you were mean or anything. Just busy. I like you enough to think of you as a friend. Maybe not a close friend, but still a friend. That's it? Rias asked skeptically. Of course. Holding grudges is for people with nothing better to do. I'm glad to get to know you better, and I'm certainly not going to let some slight you imagined you made against me prevent that, Naruto stated casually. Rias burst out laughing at his answer. Seeing him looking at her curiously, she told him between chuckles, both Akano and me commented that you would behave like that. Barely notice and then wave it off. Shrugging at the answer, Naruto told her, since you apologized, I guess it is only right I do the same. I'm certainly not saying I won't do it again, but I am sorry I left like that. I'm not sure that counts as an apology, Rias pointed out wryly. Naruto shrugged in acceptance of her words, making her giggle again. She then added, but it's really all I can get from you. You are going to just go running off again as soon as one of your friends is in trouble. It's just one of your faults that I'll have to accept, although it is admirable in a way. I'd like to think so, but you can take something else from it as well, Naruto told her with a smile. Rias raised an eyebrow and asked, and what is that? Naruto leaned forward till he was just an inch away from her face. Grinning at the flustered devil, he proclaimed honestly, you'll know that as my friend, I'll always come running when you need my help. Doesn't matter what I'm currently doing, what the problem is, or who tries to stop me. I'll come running. That's a promise, Datbeo. Rias blushed slightly at his words, but managed to recover quickly. Smiling at him, she gestured at the door while saying, that means a lot, Naruto-kun, but I think it is time you take our two newest comrades to their new home. Oh right, I forgot, Naruto exclaimed in dismay. Shooting to his feet, he ran to the door. He waved at her before leaving and added, "See you tomorrow, Rias-chan." As soon as he left, Rias slumped back on the couch. She then lifted a hand to her beating heart, trying to fight down her blush. Damn, Naruto really does fit the dashing warrior ideal to a T. Even she can't help but be drawn in when he says stuff like that. That's food for thought for another time though. After Riser has been dealt with. For now she would just be satisfied with what happened today. It was a turbulent day, what with Naruto storming out, but it had also been a very productive day. She now had a fallen angel as a pawn, and gained a sacred gear user as a bishop. She'd also solidified the relationship between herself and Naruto. That's a good day in her book. She'll focus on that, and shove any confusing thoughts of Naruto to the back of her head. That's all for now. If you enjoy, then please like, share and do comments.